The game between Jan-Krzysztof Duda and Shakhriyar Mamedyarov was opened by Dana Reznica Ozola, who happened to be Minister of Economics of Latvia from 2014 till 2016 and a Minister of Finance from 16 to 19. White gained a space advantage, but Mamedyarov played the timely f4 to avoid suffocation. By remaining solid, the Azeri held the draw. Sergey Karjakin and Wesley So did not spend a long day in the office and made the draw in 17 moves. The Russian explained that he felt tired from his epic match of the previous day, so that a short game came at the right moment to help him recover. He had not planned to waste his white game like this, but had not expected the better defense from the opponent. Grischuk and Yangyi played a balanced game and made the draw. The only really tense moment came when the Russian sacrificed the pawn with 15th knight f5. Not impressed, Yangyi grabbed it and found a safe defense. After rook f to e8, white was the one who had to be careful. Veselin Topalov and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave delivered the most entertaining game of the day. Never afraid of challenges, the former world champion chose an aggressive line against the knight. By going 11th knight f4, Topalov made it clear that no matter what, he was going to sacrifice a knight. After the game, both players seemed to be quite optimistic about their respective chances here. The Bulgarian felt he had decent compensation with a nice piece play, whereas Vachier-Lagrave believed he was better. The French was not happy with the way he handled the position later on, as he slightly lost which would pay off against a lesser opponent. After the queen swap on move 40, white hastily took a pawn on d6. He had missed rook d8, which forced the exchange of rooks. Vachier-Lagrave played very Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to World Chess FIDE Grand Prix in Riga, second day of round 2. So second classical game of round 2 will be played today. As you can see, the round has just started, and well, we've missed this moment, but the first move today was made by one of the FIDE vice presidents, Mr. Lucas Turley. Right, so 4 pairs, 8 players left. And, well, regrettably, after each round, half of the players leaving the tournament. Well, we are left with 8 players. Some might finish their race today. And, well, inevitably, we will lose 4 players altogether today or tomorrow.
I mean, this is really amazing that this fascinating structure of the tournament means that so many great players leave the tournament so early. For example, as our guest in the studio, Daniil Dubov, already noted that such a great player as Levon Aronian, I mean, he lost in the first round, not only in Riga, but also in Moscow. I mean, this is such a high-level tournament.
Yeah, right, and it basically gives you no chance for a mistake, right? Well, in the round robin, in the Swiss event, you do have a chance to come back in the tournament after a couple of wins in a row, maybe. But here, you lost, you made the draw in the second game, you're out.
Right, so this also means there's a huge stake going on and a big battle of the nerves. So the player with the best nerves probably will prevail the longest.
Yeah, and we have such situation in this particular game between Maxime Vachier-Lagrave and Veselin Topalov, where Veselin Topalov finds himself in a really, really tough situation. He must win in order to stay in the match, and he has the black pieces.
Right, and there is obviously no surprise that we see yet another Najdorf, right?
Or rather an attempt to play the Najdorf, right? So knight f3, d6, and right. Yeah, first moves being e4, c5, not e5, which could have been the other choice for Veselin, but obviously he had to go for the Sicilian.
Right.
And then bishop b5 check was played by Maxime Vachier-Lagrave.
So the Moscow variation, which is quite popular, I'd say, and actually, as far as I checked before the match, they already have played it before. No less than 3 times was the Najdorf in their encounter, with Maxime playing with white color, and 2 times actually Maxime played bishop b5, knight e7, and both of these times he went for the 4th move, short castle. So I did not see exactly what he played right now.
Right, well, yeah, so far I don't see it. Yeah, it will appear on our screen a bit later. Yangyi, well, 3 other pairs. Yeah, Yangyi, Grischuk, Mamedyarov, Duda, and Wesley So, Karjakin. It was draw in first game, so, well, far less committal the play will be for both, let's say, for both players in each match. Well, I can imagine So and Karjakin will try to be as solid as possible. Not sure of Yangyi and Grischuk. Yangyi so far haven't won a single game in against Grischuk with these colors, as far as we could find out.
That's correct. I mean, they did play a match of 4 games back in whichever year it was. If I might not be mistaken, it was year 2017. They played a friendly match of 4 games, and Alexander Grischuk won 3-1 with 2 victories and 2 draws. But since then, there have been many draws, and actually, there between individual encounter, Alexander Grischuk with white, he actually lost in the Norway chess this year. So, I mean, everything is still possible in this matchup.
Yeah, and here, once again, the opening choice is the same Catalan as Yangyi has already played a couple of times against Levon Aronian. So, well, the classical Catalan, d takes c4 is on the board, and now it's a choice for white. Will he go for precisely the same line as against Aronian with knight e5, or will try something else being queen c2? I believe those are the moves.
So we'll definitely see. That's a slight surprise, to be honest, because at least previously in their games, Grischuk with black, he was trying for some kind of a symmetrical Grunfeld. Usually started with knight f6 and g6, followed by c6, d5, and they were battling out this position. So,
which is once again pretty solid. Yeah.
Right. So he decided, okay, I'm probably part of preparation, part of the surprise element, and of course it's still an extremely solid opening, and and we'll see how it will turn out for him.
Right, and well, Mamedyarov and Duda, they are playing this Slav, and it turns out Mamedyarov has played force g3. So d4, d5, c4, c6, knight f3, knight f6, and move 4, g2, g3, which is, well, a sort of a modern take on this Slav. So in many lines, white is willing to sacrifice the pawn on c4. Well, if black takes on c4, white is not planning to take it back immediately. Seems to be a slight surprise for Duda, because he has stopped and he's thinking right here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Mamedyarov has played against Jan-Krzysztof Duda twice with the white color, and every single time he was going for something else. And the bishop on f1 usually was developed on the f1, a6 diagonal. So at some time he was playing e3, and the bishop would come out to d3. So this is probably a slight surprise for Jan-Krzysztof, and he's just trying to probably remember part of his preparation, what Shakhriyar might have played before. So definitely something to think about.
Yeah, and then we have Wesley So Karjakin, which we thought would be like super solid. Well, nothing wrong so far in the opening, but it's not symmetrical. It's not, well, I can't call this one a solid approach from either white or black. So white, in fact, plays very principled. First surprise being d4, knight f6, c4, e6, and knight c3, because it's very rare nowadays that on high level people allow the Nimzo Indian. And then, once again, keeping in mind the recent tournament in Croatia, the Grand Chess Tour tournament, So did allow the Nimzo against Magnus Carlsen just to play queen c2 and one of the rock-solid line, I mean the most solid line possible. Here, however, he went for f3, d5, a3, so, well, very complex strategical fight, and Karjakin responded, well, in a very interesting fashion. So, well, possibility for a very interesting fighting game.
Yeah, so definitely Wesley is going on for a fight, so probably he's not exactly in a peaceful mood. F3, the fourth move, he has never played against Sergey before, so definitely it's part of a preparation, and he is certainly looking for a fight, and he knows how strong is Sergey at the rapids and the blitz, so probably he sees this as a good opportunity to try to at least do something and try to win the match.
Yeah, right, because yesterday he was, well, he had no trouble whatsoever making this draw with black, and, well, seemingly he was the one to bring surprise as early as on move 2, going for the Petrov, and, yeah, Karjakin confessed in the interviews that yes, I mean, on one hand it felt nice to make a sort of a quick draw after the tiebreak match, right? But I had the white pieces, and normally I would like to continue playing, but yeah, the Petrov caught me by surprise. And
so this is actually really a slight surprise that Wesley has played such a sharp opening, because usually when he has played Nimzo before with white against Sergey, but he was always going for a quieter continuation, either trying to grab the bishop on b4, pushing for the two-bishop advantage, or playing a bit more complex middle game. And this is a very sharp continuation, so I'd say.
Yeah, let's see it more in detail on the analysis board, right? So, as I said, knight c3, well, is not the most common choice for Wesley So, but sometimes he does it. And for instance, one of his latest games against Magnus Carlsen, I mean, well, the latest game against Magnus Carlsen. So queen c2, d5, c takes, Magnus has taken with the queen, and then e3, c5, bishop d2.
Yeah,
and
you're referring to the quick draw. Right?
Yeah, this you can't really play for a win with black. Yeah, knight c6, and it was super solid. So this time it was f3, d5, a3, and then bishop to e7, which is, well, I cannot say really a subline. It's one of the possible continuations, but much more common is, of course, to capture on c3 and go c5, right? That's
that's the topical line.
That's the topical line. So bishop to e7, e4, d takes, f takes, c5, d5, and then castles short.
So at least visually, looking at the position, it would seem that white has the upper hand because he has taken the center. I mean, he controls more space. Those pawns on e4 and d5, they look slightly dangerous. For example, white might be even thinking about something like e4, e5, and d5, d6 potentially.
Yeah, that's the question. I mean, can I just do this, e5, and not sure where the knight is going, in fact.
That's actually a very good
d7?
question. Either knight d7 or knight d8, I don't know really. I mean,
well, like knight d7, on one hand it puts some pressure on e5, but on the other hand, it stops knight from b8 to be developed. So something like knight f3 in this case, maybe not hurrying up with d6. Yeah?
Well, I mean, sometimes Nimzo is being played this way. Black voluntarily gives up the center very quickly, and the white marches forward with the pawn center. But there's this very little important thing that actually black is ahead in development. So white cannot really push too much forward the pawns and forget about developing the pieces. So this is might be actually a risky strategy. So.
Yeah, especially if Wesley So was not prepared to do this at home, then
c5 I do not recall. Probably it's one of the main moves. I do remember one of the famous games of Hikaru Nakamura against Magnus Carlsen, where Magnus played e6, e5, and d4.
Over here, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. If I'm not mistaken, e5, b5,
I
and
think
bishop
something
c5.
like that, and then the bishop develops to c5, and I think it is one of the possible theoretical lines.
I always thought it's slightly dubious line at that level at least, but still, if I remember correctly, Hikaru lost the game badly. He was very close to winning. I think it was the time when he was doing very badly against Magnus. He could not overcome him. I mean, who can? Actually?
Yeah, he still does. Let's be honest, because we were doing the stats for Grandchester, Croatia, and it turned out, yes, Hikaru managed to win one game like a couple of years ago in Biel, Switzerland, if I'm not mistaken. But overall, his record is 1 win and 13 losses, and 14 losses because he lost the other one in Croatia as well.
Right. So I do remember this continuation, but c5 probably is pretty much as playable. So
honestly, I believe I had seen this one. It was played by none else but Nikita Vitiugov against one of the specialists in this line, Russian Grandmaster Sergey Volkov. So Volkov known to play f3 constantly against the Nimzo. And yeah, and I remember that Nikita crushed him easily with black. I don't, something like that. Oh no, wait. Instead of castle, I believe first the pawn was captured, then castle, then bishop d6 something, and White made one inaccurate move and got check on e8, and it was really unpleasant very quickly.
Right.
Castles really looks like a very provocative move because e5 is the first thing to consider. Well, never happened though. White went with bishop d3. White went, spent some 4 minutes and went with bishop d3, which is still fine.
It's
a
completely normal human move. I mean, developing the piece. Probably Wesley is still good within his opening preparation because at that level, people don't prepare for the next 7 or 8 moves. They're so much deeper in their analysis.
Right, absolutely. So the other games, Yangyi against Grischuk. It's the Catalan. It's the Catalan DC4. That position I've mentioned. They had it very quickly, and then. We already keep in mind that twice in this tournament, in the classical game one, and then in first rapid playoff versus Aronian, Yangyi has played knight e5 in this line after knight c6, bishop takes, and so on.
So I only assumed that Alexander had expected that Yangyi might actually repeat this line. He had found a sure draw.
Yep, so queen c2 was played. And Grischuk was ready to go for b5. And what makes it interesting, because in Moscow Grand Prix in round 2, Grischuk was advocating this position with white in his game against Hikaru Nakamura. And he has won this game. Yes, a4, b4 precisely as in our game. And then I believe Alexander played knight e5 or knight d2, which possibly leads to the same thing. Knight takes and queen takes d4. Yeah, that was the game between Hikaru and, Grischuk Nakamura from Moscow. And this time it's knight bd2, which is much more solid. Bishop goes to b7, and then after a capture on c4, if I remember correctly, the move is c5. And once again, I might refer to a recent game of Magnus Carlsen from Croatia against Dean Gliren.
Which he won in a great fashion. He had found a new idea, and in Gliren he did not exactly know how to continue. He was surprised.
Yeah, so that's one game. Then we have Vachier-Lagrave Topalov. No, first let's look at Mamedyarov Duda, and then Vachier-Topalov is the most tense encounter because Topalov has to win at any cost with black, and he seems to be one of the players who at least will go for it, because, there are some guys who would, his opening repertoire is tailored in such a way that, I play e5 against e4, right, and then I go for the Petrov. What can I do? Yeah, I play a sharp line of Petrov, and then instead of a boring line of Petrov, and I make a draw in 25 moves, not in 15 moves. But Topalov is able to play the Sicilian, and perhaps he at least will get a shot at it.
So definitely he's looking out for a fight, so we'll return to it slightly later. What's going on between Shakhriyar Mamedyarov and Jan-Krzysztof Duda is a symmetrical Grunfeld.
Yeah, and it started as the Slav, as I've mentioned. Force g3, and then I said, black can take the pawn on c4. In this case, pawn is getting sacrificed, and I believe that would be the scenario Mamedyarov wouldn't mind.
Right.
But there is this move g6, and then you look at it, and once again, I forgot about it. No, I don't believe Mamedyarov forgot about it, but that's a rock-solid possibility for black. Bishop g2, bishop g7, castles, and guess what? They played the same position yesterday with colors reversed. Right? It was knight d2, bishop f5, b3, a5, and so on. So this time Mamedyarov goes with queen b3, queen b6, knight to c3, rook to d8. That used to be once again one of the main lines here. And then I don't remember what white's supposed to do. Rook d1, and at some point it comes to a moment where, both sides almost start to skip moves. Rook d1, and there is h6 in order to play bishop e6, something like that.
Right. But at least, definitely Shak is not surprised. I assume he has prepared well for this match, and Jan-Krzysztof, he has played the symmetrical Grunfeld before. It's in his opening repertoire, so he probably is just trying to remember some nuances of the line.
Once again, I never bothered to memorize all of those lines, but I believe somewhere in this position, there was some idea to go bishop d2, and I think it was played by Shakhriyar Mamedyarov with whatever idea it is. Yeah, I mean, if he could try to...
Well, it is developing a piece, right?
No, but it was with some point. I mean, it's like it's not obviously the development, right? But it was something with bishop a5. It's like later he would have queen a3 and some bishop a5 ideas, something like that. Yeah. Like bishop d2, and for instance, you play a move like this, and then he would... No, it doesn't work still. But there was something, yeah, like this, and yeah, the pawn on e7 is attack. Of course, now black is perfectly fine taking on c4. But like the tactical idea is you take here, you go bishop a5. It still doesn't work. So I don't know.
Well,
maybe it's just a different position. Yeah, we'll see. But it's just that something tells me there was bishop d2 somewhere here. Right, and so that's it. Once again, Mamedyarov wouldn't mind to try to win with white today, not to drag it to a tiebreak where his opponent, well, technically speaking, will be a favorite when it comes to blitz. Well, silver medal at European and at World Championship, just a fraction of point behind Magnus Carlsen. So Duda really shown a tremendous performance in St. Petersburg last year at the World Blitz Championship. But of course, Mamedyarov is very good at fast time controls himself. So
well, definitely. I mean, who wants to give up the white color so easily? So I'm pretty sure that all of the players with the white color, they will try to do something at least. Okay, not necessarily everybody is going for a very tough and long and complex fight, but at least you want to check. You want to check some idea, right? If it doesn't work, okay, it's draw, no problem. But you just want to check if your opponent has done the homework. Does he remember the idea of perhaps some forced draw in a complex line? If he remembers it, I mean, okay, draw is good.
Okay, so Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, once again in this tournament in a similar situation, winning game 1, and playing bishop b5 check against Sicilian in game 2, but this time with the white pieces. So he had this position on the board against David Navara in the first round in game 2, but he was playing with black, and we were a bit, I would say I was a bit surprised when Maxime himself chose knight d7 when he only needed a draw.
Right.
Because this is known to be like the only way to keep the position complex. Bishop d7 allows too many simplifications. Yeah. This time Topalov was sort of forced to go knight d7. Bishop goes to a4, and this is it's a bit of a surprise, I have to say.
I would like to add here, I've done quite research for the Moscow line myself, and bishop a4 is the latest trend in this line, because the theory obviously is developing. There have been some, actually quite a few attempts to play the c3, bishop d3 and bishop c2, as David Navara was actually trying against Maxime.
Yeah, c3, knight f6, and bishop went to d3.
Yeah, and bishop went to d3.
That was Navara-Lagrave,
right, but the point of bishop a4, as far as I remember, usually is to try to set up some kind of Marozzi. I mean, usually it is. I mean, it depends really what black does, because let's say in the position after the bishop b5, knight d7, bishop a4, which was played in the game after knight f6 castle, the idea is that you cannot really take the pawn on e4. It's quite dangerous, because after knight e4, I do not remember. I think it was a rook e1, knight f6, d4,
and then d4.
And this is really dangerous, because white just wants to open up the position, at least from afar. It might seem that this is really nothing special for white, but black cannot really take on d4, right? Because then after c takes on d4, yeah, our live stream is again lagging for some reason. But so the point is, if in the diagram which you are, dear viewers, seeing, if here after bishop a4, short castle, bishop b5 check, knight d7, bishop a4, knight f6, short castle, knight takes on e4, the point is that knight of e4 is dangerous, as I already explained, that white gets some kind of an attack. And this has been analyzed actually quite heavily amongst the top players. So the point is, after bishop a4 check, I hope we'll get the screen shortly.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Yeah,
yeah,
so
that's the screen.
No,
yeah,
so
it works.
okay, let's say after bishop a4 check, knight f6, I make a short castle which was in the game.
And e5. Topalov, by the way, spent 8.5 minutes to decide to go on e5.
I think there is another alternative to play e6, and this is when you play c4. At least as far as I remember, that is the general idea, and you still cannot really take the pawn on e4 because white can still play d4 and go for a quick initiative. And this is when white actually manages to play knight c3. Actually, there is some history about this line because after bishop b5 and knight d7, there is an idea to play the Morozzi bind immediately c2, c4. But the difference is that black not always is obliged to play a6. So by playing in this order of the moves of bishop a6 and only then after, if black plays a6 and white plays c4, white has supposedly forced black to play this a6. I mean, okay, this might feel quite confusing, I can understand it, but this bishop a4 actually is quite a trendy move. And if black doesn't really play a6, then white can simply proceed with c3 and d4, and that is the whole point of this setup. So Veselin actually played e5 in the game. I do not really remember this continuation. Probably it's playable. So c3, what Maxime has played, it makes perfect sense because assuming the pawn on e4 is still relatively untouchable, because after knight takes on e4, you would imagine that white will continue with d2, d4, followed by rook e1, and the pin of the bishop on a4 targeting the knight on d7 is quite uncomfortable. So black, I don't think he can really take the pawn on e4. So c3 might have been, I mean, this whole line probably is slight surprise for Veselin.
Yeah, and as much as he wants to disbalance the fight, as much as he wants to complicate matters, this pawn you just don't take because it's, you'll be under very strong attack. And Maxime, of course, if he is willing to sacrifice, that means that he has analyzed the consequences of this.
So there's also, for example, this possibility. Let's say if black now plays a6. So let's say at the right time he wants to play a6, b5 and bishop b7. With the order of the moves, white has probably tricked black because after a6 I can play bishop c2, and the question is, can black actually right now play the typical idea of this variation c5, c4? I'm not sure really if here it is possible or not. The screen. So let's say after what's been played, e5, c3, can black actually play a6? So that is the big question. So a6, I would probably try bishop c2. So I don't know really if c5, c4 is possible. So I don't know, probably it is possible to check it. What happens after c4, I'm not really sure. I mean,
c4, it's a
thematic idea at least.
So first white goes bishop c2, right?
Yeah, bishop c2, that is the idea, and supposedly black is slightly late for the c4, but yet again, I mean, these variations are usually so similar that I might be mixing up with something, and I'm not really sure, but I would have to double check it. Perhaps white has just tricked black with the order of the moves. I mean, it's all about the order of the moves. And this is why Veselin is thinking about his possibilities, and definitely there's something to think about, and at least the position has some resemblance to the Raya Lopez, because let's say if black continues with the short castle, white simply proceeds to play rook e1 on d4, and it's going to be quite difficult for black to play for the win.
It's so solid, and I'm not even sure how Topalov is supposed to play. And that's always a dilemma, especially when you're playing black and you're in a must-win situation. Should you risk it and play, one g6 just to avoid any simplifications? Or I had seen some people doing the opposite. The most remarkable case, I remember, one of the first World Cups, or maybe it was still called the World Championship, Knockout World Championship back then. And I remember Rafael Vaganian, who was taking part. He lost the game 1 with white. And with black, he has played Queen's Gambit, Bishop E7 on move 3. Very solid. And he won the game. Right. So, well, it really depends on the, on the personality of the player. Well, Topalov seems to be the guy who will go all out. Right, and it's our pleasure, just to interrupt a bit our analysis, it's a pleasure to be joined in the studio by Vice President of FIDE, Mr. Lucas Turley. Am I pronouncing it correct?
Yes, good morning, good afternoon.
Right, so, I'm not sure what to ask you, but do you follow the games? Yeah, first thing,
yes, I'm trying to follow the games. Of course, my favorite game from yesterday was Duda against Mamedyarov, since he's my countryman, so I'm supporting him very strongly. But I think this format of Grand Prix is very interesting also for chess fans, and it's like more emotions, and we can approach not just people, just sport
absolutely
lovers.
Absolutely, that's I believe that's the goal for changing the format, making it more exciting. And then while we were lamenting here that it's a pity we are losing with every round, we are losing half of the players, but let's hope we are not losing the audience.
But on the other hand, I heard that the players who will lose in this round, they will play in Tal Memorial in Blitz.
Right, this is something we probably should mention about. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, this has been one of the points. I mean, in the parallel of the Riga Grand Prix, there's also additional parallel tournament going on, which starts today. Here in Riga, which is the Michael Tal Memorial Rapid and Blitz, today was given the green light of the Rapid event, if I remember correctly. And there are so many great names playing. Actually, 2 participants of Riga Grand Prix who lost in the first round. It is David Navara and Nikita Vitiugov. I saw them in the list at least. I think they played the first round already, so it's quite amazing. I mean,
so Nikita Vitiugov decided to join.
Yes, he decided to join. Obviously, he was probably not very happy with the tiebreak he played against Grischuk.
I can imagine, because with David Navara, it was interesting. I still hope that maybe he will be around, that maybe we can lure him in our studio once. Because when he lost game 1 to Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and he was asking me, what will be your plan, your preparation for the game 2? And he said that's a secret. And then, before second game was even played, he was on the list of Tal Memorial Rapid.
Wow.
So I don't know if it was he was that pessimistic about his chances, or maybe it was sort of a insurance, or so that if I'm eliminated, I'll play the Tal Memorial. If not, then I will withdraw from this tournament, but I go through. But so David, he was. From the very beginning, he was inclining to play the Rapid, and of course it's got to be a great tournament in memory of one of the greatest world champions.
Right. I mean, we probably will talk about Tal Memorial also later, because it's probably something we should pay additional attention for. But there are more than 50 Grandmasters playing. 55. Wow.
And 26 countries, I heard.
This is amazing. I mean, it's very, very strong players from all over the Europe, and almost 300 participants. So definitely this is something we are going to be at least following when we'll have the time. And it's amazing that is happening here in Riga.
Right, and I brought the game of Jan-Krzysztof Duda on a screen. That's essentially the same position they had yesterday with colors reversed, right? So, the symmetrical Grunfeld, where Jan-Krzysztof himself, he went for knight d2, Mamedyarov chose queen b3. All of those positions, they are so solid for black that it's really, really hard to get at least a glimpse of an advantage for white, which, by the way, Jan-Krzysztof Duda managed yesterday. He was better and perhaps didn't really find all the best moves, but he was better against Mamedyarov. So today seems to be very solid for him, and I don't know what we can say about this position so far. Well, just some normal opening moves. Knight to e1, I assume at some point perhaps will be, we'll try to go to c5 or whatever this knight e1 means. It's not the most obvious move to me, right? I mean, first you would think, yeah, white has to develop the bishop from c1. Yeah. Anyway, it was played pretty quickly, so Mamedyarov perhaps is in a sort of a opening preparation, but doesn't seem to be so dangerous for Jan-Krzysztof.
It seems just a normal. I mean, knight e1 is probably a good move, because I think the point of bishop f5 is that after, if you develop the bishop on c1, bishop f4, you have to counter d takes on c4, queen takes on c4, and queen takes on b2. I do remember there was a line like that.
I'm
not the greatest expert, obviously, in this line, but at least I think there was such a line. So the point of bishop f5 is that you
the bishop controls the b1, so there is no rook b1.
It might be dangerous for white.
Honestly, looks pretty dangerous with knight g5, and then maybe I'll get e4, rook b1. Yeah, but the idea, of course, is there. And the other point could be that if something like this happens, I'm not sure about the d5 pawn, to be honest, but yeah, like this, and then you're more or less forced with white to move the knight anyway, and to, well, not immediately, but sooner or later you will have to move the knight and exchange the light square bishops. Perhaps Mamedyarov wants to keep more pieces on the board. And I have to say, well, I used to play a lot of open tournaments in Poland back at the end of 90s, beginning of 2000s, and I do remember a lot of young talented players, and once I was really disappointed after my loss to some 2200 boy who was Radoslav Wojtaszek back then, and well, then again there was 2150 rated player who beat me in rapid, and then I took my revenge in classical. It was Grzegorz Kajewski, now Anand second. So I know all those guys.
Well, in previous times he was Anand second.
Yeah, right. They both work for Vichy Anand. Yeah, right. So what I mean, I don't know the newest generation, like Duda and perhaps Piorun. Those are new players to me, right? There was the other one. There was some Kasper Piorun, and who else? And Kamil Dragon.
Kamil Dragon and Jacek Tomczak. And last Olympiad was very, very successful for Team Poland.
He beat Vladimir Kramnik. I do remember it.
Yes,
he made it. That was a big result, of course.
Bringing the victory over the Russian team.
And the last round against India, it was 2-2, but with only half of a point more, instead of fourth place, Poland would be first. But it's sport. It's sport. So
I mean, now and then I was cheering for Poland in the Olympiad, because the Latvian team was doing so badly, so I had to find somebody to cheer for. So, I mean, I hope your countryman will do really great in the tournament. So he's been demonstrating really very confident play.
Actually, for supporters in Poland, and I think in many countries, the style of Duda is very interesting. When he was playing World Blitz Championship, a lot of people were supporting him because Magnus was winning, and Duda still just half a step behind him. So the style of play of Duda, of Magnus, very interesting for supporters, not only for top chess players.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was amazed with the young gentleman in Moscow when he wins game 1 against Wesley So, and then he chooses the most obvious choice to make a draw with black, the dragon variation. He goes to sacrifice and exchange, and there's some very complex game. And even though he lost, I mean, he deserves all the credit for the spirit, for his will to fight.
This is why we love sport people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, perhaps, Lucas, you can tell me, not me, but us and the audience, something about your everyday life. What does it mean to be a FIDE vice president?
It's, of course, a great honor, but a lot of things are going on with the chess in the world, and I hope many people see what are the changes. We are just after Baku presidential board. There were a lot of decisions. For example, some fees for the World Championship in different categories will be waived. So it will be very helpful for participants. We helped veterans in the senior World Championship, and there are a lot of projects. And what we can mention here in Riga, there are more companies, corporate sponsorship coming to chess with. I think it's great news for everyone in the chess world.
Right. Can you perhaps elaborate something about the Coca-Cola agreement, or it's still a secret? I mean, there was this big news which came out. I mean, FIDE has signed the agreement with Coca-Cola, but nobody really knows the details. What's all about it?
We don't have Coca-Cola in the studio. So.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, we have water here, right? But we don't have Coca-Cola.
You should have one, definitely. Maybe let's not reveal the details of a deal, of course, but I think it's very important that such a big brand is interested to be involved in chess. And there will be two events. Tal Memorial is first, and both of these events it's like the pilot cooperation, and there will be some. And after this, both parties will evaluate how the cooperation is running, and I am sure that there will be second part of this cooperation and bigger with every year.
All right, so that sounds like a very good news to me. Right, corporate sponsors. That's what chess definitely needs. We have a lot of players, a lot of interesting battles on the very top level, but sometimes we are in the shadow of different sports and so on and so on. So let's hope that new FIDE will bring the image of our game.
I think that's not only a job for new FIDE. It's everybody in national federations. Even when you're running your club, you can do small events. And from my experience, when you have a lot of small events in the region, I mean, like 50 to 100 people, then you can create something like events for 1,000 or even more people. And this is very interesting for companies because it's their potential customers as well. And so it should work as every sport in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the organization of those small events locally and then, to build the global structure. So let's hope it's going to work for all of us. Right. Shall we take a quick look at the other games? How does that develop?
Yeah, probably.
I started the game in, exactly this one, Vachier-Lagrave against Veselin Topalov, and I played e4.
Well,
yes.
Regrettably, we started our broadcast like a tiny bit earlier, and we've missed that it was this
but it was e4,
So e4.
Nothing changed. Okay.
Nothing changed, yeah. So he accepted your move.
Yes, actually, I asked, yeah.
Right. Sometimes there have been these funny stories, like I believe it was Grischuk's tiebreak we were watching a couple of days ago when, there was... once again, a guest to make a first move, and Grischuk said, whatever you like, and then he returned one e4 and he played knight f3.
Right, yeah. But I have some experience yet again, I mean, with this line, so it looks like a slight disaster, to be honest, for black in the knight, because this is such a perfect position for white. I mean, normally white... let us stop here. He took with the pawn on e5 with this thematic idea. I mean, white wants to play c4 and knight c3 the next move. And the problem is that black cannot really counter this idea of knight c3 jumping and c4. And the knight on f6 cannot jump so quickly to get to d4. So I think that Veselin did something wrong. I think this whole setup is just dangerous for black. I mean, there's no way he's playing for the win, and it's just a very comfortable position to play with white.
So we can say Maxime got what he wanted, and at some point we might get this eternal question of, like, do you want a draw in much better position just to finish the match, right, or you'll play on? Because, there have been examples in the chess history, like in absolutely winning position, the in a World Championship match, and the draw is enough, and then the draw will be given to a challenger.
You were probably referring to the oldest match, Alexander Alekhine against Max Euwe, right?
Yeah, I believe that one, and I think there were some other cases,
even older,
if I'm not mistaken.
Might be.
Yeah. Okay, so what I mean, but Maxime does care about his ratings. They didn't have rating back then, right? Maxime does care about his rating, and well, depending on the position, if he's just comfortably better, he might continue playing on.
Yeah, there's always that you are still also fighting not only for one of those spots from the Grand Prix to qualify for the candidates, you also need a high rating. I mean, just in case you can qualify as the highest rated player.
Yeah, we'll speak of qualification more in detail the closer this event is to its conclusion. Yeah, to
question: who are your favorites to qualify?
To qualify, well, you mean from the Grand Prix
yes,
tournament?
From Grand Prix.
So far, it seems obvious the one who won the first leg, right? Yannick Pelletier, who shows, well, not only that tournament he was successful, but he has shown very good performance over the last couple of years. So I think it's
I also
him.
think Yannick Pelletier, definitely Alexander Grischuk, because he was playing in the final of Moscow Grand Prix, and he's still here, he's still fighting. I won't be surprised he'll be advancing further. And definitely among the favorites, I would name Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. I mean, he's so strong, and he could have won all of the 3 games, classical games, in this Riga Grand Prix. I mean, he made the draw in the first round, the second game against David Navara from a superior position, and he won yesterday, and now he has a better position. So
yeah, right. And I liked Maxime's confidence. He joined us in the studio after the game. Well, he was critical about his play, but don't remember if we asked him or he came with this himself. He said, I believe I had decent chances to go through. I'm very experienced in this knockout tournament. So, usually players are a bit superstitious and they tend to, kind of underestimate their chances, maybe sometimes on purpose. Yeah, well, I'm just trying to do well, but no big expectations. And the guy goes, yes, I have good chances. So.
No, I mean, just recently impressive. He gave an interview to chess.com, and he did not hide the obvious fact that he is setting the qualification for the candidates as his priority at the moment. So that is his goal. He wants to be in the candidates. He wants to fight against Magnus Carlsen. So definitely the guy is ambitious.
Have you heard the big news that Magnus will play the Grand Swiss?
Yes, that is one of the topics we wanted to bring up later. So definitely it's a big news and a big topic for discussion. So
Magnus, well, as far as I understand, he's planning to play the Grand Swiss and the World Cup as well? Or not really?
I'm not sure about the World Cup. He used to play before. There was even a joke floating around the Facebook that perhaps this means that Magnus is going to play Magnus in 2020. But jokes aside, obviously it's not going to happen because he cannot qualify for the candidates. Yes. But people like to joke about this. And,
and since we are, let's say, broadcasting a FIDE event, I feel an urge to ask the FIDE Vice President what will be the forthcoming big events. Well, we've just discussed the, let's say, the Swiss, which are maybe not announced yet, but you can give us the idea, like what's coming up. Yeah,
if we know they're not announced.
That means it's a sort of a...
Yes, but I think the Grand Swiss, it's very important event for us. But then at the end of the year, World Blitz and Rapid Chess Championship is also a very important event, not only for the players, but also for chess in general. Because with this event, we can approach many people who just love chess, and they can watch shorter games. Because for some people who just love the sport, love to support long games, are not the perfect to spend half of a day. But when you have 20 games or like 15 games per day of Blitz, you can approach with very good commentary to everybody who want to support people who are participating, our players.
Well, that was my argument already a couple of years ago, and I'm really happy that, I hear this from you. Yeah, well, we have to kind of rearrange to modern life standards. Yes, I understand classical chess always been like historically that's the pinnacle of of chess, of the game, that long time control, and the World Championship match is played under the longest time control possible. But yeah, for the audience sake, we have to speed up a bit. That's the feeling.
We should remember about our tradition, but on the other hand, we have classical chess, rapid chess, blitz. Sometimes we can see bullets, which is fun. This is maybe not chess exactly sometimes, but it is interesting, and
Absolutely.
we should provide things that are interesting for people. But keep remembering about our history, our tradition, because a lot of people are interested to see the perfect games of our top players.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you disclose any details where the championship is going to be held?
It's
secret.
It's still not announced, so when it will be ready to be announced. But I think it's okay. I'll say anything more.
If we speak of continents, is it Europe? Is it Asia, Africa?
Is it north or west of Latvia? Or which direction?
North of Latvia, west of Latvia.
Right.
Okay.
I'm sure that World Blitz and Rapid Chess Championship in Latvia would be perfect idea. So artists, you should start to work with
Definitely.
it. I've been to Latvia a few times already, and there are wonderful organizers, volunteers here as well, who want to help to organize those events. So I think that's a very good idea. I will talk with Mr. President at Latvia.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, and I believe we can let you go whatever you like. Yeah, thanks for joining, and we can progress with the games.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you for being here. So we can proceed with the games. Thank you, dear viewers. It was Lucas Turley, FIDE Vice President, in the studio, who gave us some very interesting insights on the future of FIDE, the upcoming projects, and he is a countryman of Jan-Krzysztof Duda, and obviously he cheers for Jan-Krzysztof, and well, we also do. I mean, we cheer for every single player in the Grand Prix. And but let's not forget, we still need to follow the games, and there's some action going on. Well, we did a little interview with Lucas, and there is something going in the game between Maxime Vachier-Lagrave and Veselin Topalov. I would dare to say the position is a solid advantage for white, and things are not going exactly well for Veselin. What do you think, Yevgeny?
Okay, so bishop e6 was played, and I believe queen e2, played by Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. The knight, as you absolutely correctly pointed out, is heading towards d5. What I'm thinking for Topalov, I mean, can he enter one of those?
It's draw grid.
Wow,
there goes our
so
analysis.
He cannot.
He cannot. He won't.
He won't. Yeah, and it seems that Topalov just was not in the mood.
He was not in
Didn't feel.
Yeah, he knows he's worse. I mean, there's no way he's going to play for the win, because after knight c3, knight d5, I mean, if white even wants to make a draw, he can even potentially play knight c3, play such a crazy move as bishop g5. Yeah, so we can put it on the screen. So let's say bishop g5, even swap on f6, play knight d5.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Like, you take, you go knight d5.
I mean, there's no way Black is ever playing this for the win. Yeah. Okay, this might be some problematic, maybe b5.
b5, c4.
Yeah, so I was more thinking about e takes on d5. But okay, I mean, white is not even obliged to go for this. I mean, it's just illustration of the possibilities that white holds. So Veselin just thought, okay, I mean...
it was honestly, I thought, like, if you play, let's say, knight c3, and I'm not sure about a6. It's not like it's the move Black has to play. I thought, actually, if white enters something like this...
bishop d6.
Well, Black is never in time,
Yeah,
the
bishop
problem
d6
is Black is
bishop g5.
bishop d6, there is always bishop g5. So, essentially, if white is somehow too slow to build up something like this with Black, like they do in the Najdorf, right? f5, knight g7, and try to play this.
Oh, this would be good, actually, for Black.
This at least is playable, right? But Black seemingly is never on time to do it.
Yeah, so it didn't happen, and I'm sorry for the Bulgarian fans who were cheering for Veselin. For Veselin Topalov, the former world champion, the tournament is over. I mean, he already was sort of satisfied that he managed to beat Hikaru Nakamura in the first round, and so he already was satisfied with his performance in the tournament. So it is difficult to play against Maxime, right?
Yeah, and we can only thank Veselin for, I mean, obviously now in results-oriented thinking, he's not happy with his decision not to accept a draw yesterday. At some point, he was offered a draw in this crazy complex position.
Right.
But yeah, but it made us watch such an entertaining game.
Yeah, there was this moment. We didn't actually know it at the studio, and Maxime did not reveal it to us also in the post-mortem analysis that after Maxime said in the studio he had played knight e5 c6 and mentioned that this is normal, not the move you want to make, and you're not happy about it. He forgot to mention that he actually offered to draw, and that Veselin Topalov actually declined it, and he continued to play on. And well, so as it happened, he made a mistake afterwards, and he lost the game. But still, I mean, this is a great sportsmanship by both players, and it's very entertaining to watch to play the best players in the world.
Right, so, well, that means Maxime Vachier-Lagrave so far continues his smooth sailing, having a free day after each round. Well, it's not so easy not so hard to achieve. You only have to win in classical part.
Right.
So far, it was only him and Shakhriyar Mamedyarov who didn't play the tiebreak.
Yeah, so there are 3 more games still going on, and what would you choose, Yevgeny? Which
well,
game?
let's check something. Well, they're all 3 of them. They're not that far developed. It's like move 12 in 2 games and move 11 in Yangyi Grischuk. So Wesley So and Karjakin. Remember this quite well, seemingly quite sharp line in the Nimzo. Let's see what happens there. After castle short and bishop d3. Karjakin spent 17 minutes before he went for bishop d6. So it seems that bishop d3, despite being a normal developing move, and, well, perhaps Karjakin was more counting on white accepting some sharp play with e5, or, I don't know, maybe he was waiting for knight f3 to be played first. This we don't know, but, yeah, it happens that bishop d3 was sort of a surprising move, at least judging by the time spent on the very next move by Sergey Karjakin. So bishop to d6, bishop g5, knight d7 took Karjakin another 6 minutes to make, knight f3, e takes d5, and knight takes d5.
Wow, this is not something you would expect. I mean, normally, okay, I would understand that the white is not thinking about c takes on d5 because Black has such a nice control of the e5 square, and potentially he could, I mean, in beginning, unwind of the pin of the bishop on g5, move the queen wherever it might go. But I would expect a normal move, the standard move would be e takes on d5 because...
Yeah, e takes, yeah. You open the bishop.
You open the bishop and you keep the center, you have the passed protected pawn, so that would be the normal developing move. But there is one little problem with this move. I mean, the white king is still in the center, so
yeah, and then rook e8, you either lose time, or possibly queen e8 with knight g4 ideas, right? So
yeah, exactly. I mean, queen e8, knight g4 looks actually quite interesting with the incoming knight e5, knight e3 check is threatening, so... I assume this is why he actually played knight takes on d5.
So knight d5, well, still quite a complex position, and yeah, well, we still hope that this will develop into something very interesting. We still have another 2 games going, Mamedyarov, Duda, Yangyi, Grischuk, but now it is the time to interview Veselin Topalov and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave.
We'll be returning soon.
Well, thank you very much, Veselin Topalov and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, to join us after this draw. Well, the first question seems obvious, Veselin. Why so early?
Well, I think the final position is just not only that it's slightly better for white. Okay, I don't know how much better it is, but the thing is somehow I don't see any risk for white because it's a symmetrical position, but just white put his knight in the center to d5, and I just see only fighting for draw. And the thing is that I just don't see how can white make a mistake because White has many simple moves, developing moves, and he doesn't need to win. I mean, if he sees a draw, he can force, and if I play some bad moves, then it can just become critically badly, and it's too early in the game. And I think Vachier had a lot of time, so I didn't see any chance, realistic chance to play.
Does it mean something went wrong a little earlier?
Well, okay, this is a new move he played, and I didn't really know it. And
Bishop A4, right?
Yeah. Okay. There are so many tricky new moves that I just don't follow all the new trends.
So Maxime, of course, ideal development of things here. You went for this line because it is rather solid compared to an open Sicilian?
Well, it's not exactly more solid, but I mean, the element of surprise is always good, and of course it's rather tricky, so it can get a bit better for white. And if black manages to equalize, generally the positions get quite dry, at least if I want to. So that was my plan, and of course when I took on e5, I wasn't sure it was the best decision objectively. I mean, of course I could play d5, I mean for some sort of d5, and this should be slightly better as well, but like Veselin said, d takes e5 and c4 just gives me the ideal position in this situation.
For you, so far so good. You've won your 2 matches without tiebreak, so you're getting each bonus point in the standings for the Grand Prix. So far, you can be very happy. What is the difference between your matches and the other matches?
Well,
of the other players, I mean.
Well, it depends on the developments. I mean, in Moscow there were a lot of decisive matches, and here, well, against David, I got an opening disaster. I mean, so he played, I think, 1 or 2 terrible moves, and then it was just over. And yesterday it was a very fighting game where we both had our chances, and you know, in the end I won, but you know, the position was very complicated. I think in the other matches the games were quite dry, if I remember well. I mean, of course, no, it's not true, because Sasha's game was actually very interesting, but it petered out to a draw. I mean, it could easily have been the same for me yesterday.
Well, thank you very much, and good luck for the rest, Maxime, and have a nice trip home.
Thank you.
Okay.
Welcome back, guys. So, second day of round 2. Already had seen the first result. Yes, well, a bit unexpected. But you cannot argue Topalov's position was not really optimistic one. So, well,
yeah, he did not play exactly the best way, and Maxime just executed a known idea that in the typical setup, after Veselin had played queen c7, d takes on e5, d takes e5, knight e5, followed by c4, knight c3, is a known idea. It's not even new, so it actually secures white a solid advantage. So Veselin, probably I would say, he simply forgot about it. He just offered to draw in a worse position, and obviously, I mean, Maxime was happy to accept. So Maxime Vachier-Lagrave is through.
He's through, so first semi-finalist's name is revealed, and 3 other pairs we have quite a serious fight there. So once again we were talking a bit about Wesley So and Karjakin, knight takes d5 being an interesting continuation. We can probably go back to this game because a couple of moves more were played after knight takes d5 h6 followed.
Yeah, so
bishop
you need to keep the tension, right?
And then the move or at least I completely forgotten about, there is a check, unpinning the...
Right, so this is the point actually why Sergey played h6. So the point is he first lured the bishop to h4. That is the whole point.
Yeah, right, like if you give a check, then I assume bishop d2 would have been the move.
So bishop d2, maybe then bishop c3, so the bishop can be reactivated.
Queen goes, maybe bishop c3. So first h6, and now you have to choose the diagonal. I mean, if you go there, then there is no pin, and black can actually play knight e5.
Right.
After bishop h4, which keeps the tension similarly, there is queen a5 check. And the question for black, for white, what do you do here? Because losing the castle right doesn't seem to be such a great idea.
No, it's not. So I would imagine either queen d2 going for some sort of a better endgame, assuming it is a better endgame, and then take with the king.
Yeah, takes.
Something like that actually makes sense.
Seems that white has some slight pressure, right?
Actually, in terms of the match strategy, this also would seem the safer choice. I mean, avoiding any complex battle. I mean, draw. Okay, no problem. Draw is a draw.
Yeah, but still, maybe I'll get a chance. Because e5 square, as juicy as it looks, it's not easily accessible for black pieces, right? You can't play knight e5 at once because f6 is hanging, and exchanging here, well, I assume c takes in this case, and then white might be too fast with some rook c1s, b4s. You know, if you try to put the pawn on put the piece on e5, like knight e5, for instance, or bishop g3, and somehow this blockade is not firm enough, right? If you try rook e8, for instance, white might just want to swap everything, go b4, and black is not in time. The feeling is like black is somewhat not in time.
Well, definitely. So I assume that at least black would want to try. He's not going to take on d5, so he's going to try to blockade the e5 square somehow with knight g4.
Knight g4 and then put the knight on e5, yeah. But then white might say, you know what, well, it's only one square and too many pieces heading towards it. Yeah, so say, I'm not sure what will be the best move. I don't quite like h3. Something.
Yeah, maybe just something like rook e1 and then whatever after knight e5, rook a to f1, h to f1, and
yeah, I'm saying you want to take, I'll take with the pawn, right? And then go f4.
This feels like sort of pleasant for white. I do not know, is this actually better for white? I mean, this particular position already looks better for white, but...
Yeah, the knight on d5 is really annoying. Knight on d5 is really annoying. Whenever you exchange it, white captures with the c pawn, getting a massive pawns in the center.
Right. I mean, okay, instead of the queen d2, obviously, it's not the only move which is in white's arsenal. He could also try to make some weird move as knight c3, go back, then make a castle, then go back knight e5.
Can I try this?
Or b4.
I mean, just to try it. b4, c takes, a takes.
And after bishop takes b4,
bishop
move
b4,
the king.
move the king. Yeah,
Right.
that was the point. So that
King e2.
e2, for instance.
But it allows knight takes and d5 some funny tactics.
Knight takes.
Yes.
Whenever the king goes, that's funny. Whenever king goes, because if it's king f1, it's still knight takes d5, and then if rook a5 played, it's knight e3, and with king on e2, it's same thing. Knight takes d5, and I can't take on a5 because of knight c3.
Right.
All right. So b4 perhaps is not the greatest idea then,
I mean,
unless I can. No, that's because sometimes that would be good enough. I mean, if castle with your king on check would be a legal move, I would believe white has a decent compensation, right? But then I have to once again to trade the queens or to spend the tempo, like losing the castle, right? And then it's no longer seems to be that appealing. Yeah, if I can make castle here, then it could be that it's playable. Yeah,
but
could be that it's playable.
You cannot really do that. So while this is interesting idea, I don't think it really works.
Yeah, so we really expect queen d2 and...
I think queen d2 is the most human approach. Although knight c3 might be possible, but it looks a bit strange. But it at least keeps queens on the board. So I would say there is a choice between going for a complex game, after knight c3 follow the castle, and then presumably knight e5 go back, because the black queen on a5 is still sort of out of the game.
It's not that great, yeah. Well... In fact, yeah, knight c3 seems like a tempo loss, but might not necessarily be a tempo loss.
Yeah, so this would be a complex game, but Queen D2 is a safe approach. So what do you choose if you're Wesley So? That is a big question.
Well, if I'm Wesley So, I'm just quickly playing Queen D2, then snapping this queen on the D2 with the king and saying I'm better and I cannot lose this one.
Probably.
So I'm very happy.
That would be a smart choice, but we'll see what Wesley will actually choose. In the meantime, we probably can see what's going on in the game. Yangyi against Alexander Grischuk, and Grischuk was yet again in his deep think mode, thinking for more than half an hour.
After Rook D1.
After Rook D1, 11th move by Yangyi, Grischuk went for his famous deep thought, and he finally played Bishop to E4 after more than half an hour of think. Wow.
So knight to C3, knight C6.
Yeah. So knight c6 has been played, so it's a standard position in the Catalan. So I don't know really.
What was the problem? Why Grischuk was actually thinking for such a long time?
Actually, this bishop e4 is a known idea sometimes to force a draw. For example, the white queen continues to walk on the white squares, queen b3, then black plays bishop
d5, and queen goes back.
Bishop e4, you make this smart face that there was a fight, but actually this is a known draw.
That's for instance, one of the examples, right? Bishop d7 takes, bishop goes here, bishop g5, and then, they do play queen c1 or something, but quite a few games ended like this.
So the point actually, this is the way usually they play, but actually bishop e4 is a useful move because white, let's say in this position, white would normally want to play something like knight c3
and then play e2, e4. Yeah, of course, queen d3, I mean, that's essentially what I was trying to say. White is playing queen c1, but not because he's happy to put the queen on c1, but just because queen d3 is met with bishop e4, always disturbing the queen.
So this is a similar idea. The variation is similar. So the point is, after bishop e4, I would imagine he did not want to go for the repetition. Maybe the thought crossed in his mind, maybe it just wasn't possible, but the point is revealed after white played queen b3, knight c6. So if Alexander Grischuk had played immediately knight c6 instead of bishop e4, he would have some problems with the pin of the bishop on b7 with the means of something like knight f3.
F to e5.
Yes, knight e5. That's what I would imagine is the biggest concern for black. Not necessarily that it's bad, but it's something to worry about, at least. So at least I would imagine. So this is why he played bishop e4, and only then knight c6.
Only then knight goes to c6.
And it involves some temporary pawn sacrifice because...
dc5, you have to prove you can get...
Yeah, so d takes c5 definitely is something white is considering here. It's not a blunder. It's not a free pawn. A black voluntarily sacrifices the pawn and then hopes to regain it at some point later after finishing development of the pieces. And potentially the pawn falls after, I don't know, after perhaps some ridiculous line after d takes on c5. Actually, where do you go after d takes on c5?
dc5, that's the question. I'm not sure. Can I possibly play? Yeah, that's the same question Yangyi asks Alexander Grischuk. He just takes the pawn on c5. I was thinking of knight d7 because in some positions it feels like I'll be able to take on c5 without unpinning the knight. Can this be right?
Perhaps.
Like you go knight e5, I believe that should be critical, and then I can't calculate a thing, obviously. Like knight c5, rook d8.
You need to calculate this
for instance, Well, first of all, bishop g2 looks bad. Rook d7, and then we take the bishop. So I have to go for this. Then white can't really move the queen because the rook on d1 is hanging, so white is forced to play rook d8, knight b3. A lot of stuff hanging, right? Like take here, for instance.
It makes sense, right?
And then who knows? Maybe black has to take on g2 because if I take a8,
then actually white is ahead in material.
Bishop e4,
at least visually. So
knight a1, knight c6.
This might be funny, I mean, watching from the viewer's point of view, but this is not so obvious. A grandmaster cannot immediately jump in and say, okay, I mean, this is
that's easy. Yeah, well, too many things hanging, yeah?
Too many things hanging. You need to check everything. You need to check the order of the moves. You need to check intermezzo moves.
Rook A8. And, yeah, I think I have to take on A8, by the way, because this seems to be like a move with the tempo, but then I capture with the rook. Or it's still not clear. Capture with the rook, yeah. And in case of bishop e4, I have a chance to take on e5 first. Yeah, my rook on a8 is not hanging. So that's tricky. Rook a8. And what happens if I take this guy? So that after
rook f8,
takes, king f8.
And simply king... No, there is no simply.
Yeah, like king g2, knight e5. And I'm claiming... Okay, maybe I'm actually worse. In the final position, knight c6, bishop d2, king is running faster. Yeah, even this one says just to look for simpler options. Maybe white was winning in some other line, but if you see that this doesn't work for black, then you discard knight d7.
Well, perhaps there's something else instead of the knight d7. It does look risky, voluntarily going under the pin. The queen might go, or bishop d5 might be possible.
Yeah, maybe bishop d5 is another try. So at least you're sort of threatening bishop c4 and...
Well, definitely, Grischuk has prepared something here, because you do not play knight c6 and then be surprised. Oh, there's d takes on c5, right? What am I going to do about it? So he's just double checking what he actually had prepared, and there might be... What about knight a5? What about such a crazy move? Wow. What about knight a5? What is that?
Oh, well. This is, let me tell you, this is an improved version of, of knight d7. Because if this happens, black is super happy. Black is probably just winning. Yes, so knight a5. I will have to take on a5.
Yes, you have to, and then queen a5. There's
then
no
queen a5, and no problem at all, because this pawn will be taken more or less on the very next move. And can it be that black actually is planning? Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if he can play for a win this one. Yeah, but seems to be totally fine. Not sure how.
I'm sure this is actually what he planned, because it makes most sense, unless bishop d5 is better, but this knight a5 actually looks
knight a5 looks tempting and good.
It's not obvious, but it comes together with the knight c6 idea. So definitely he sees the idea. He's just trying to, if it works, I mean, this is an amazing idea, at least.
And then once again, that's the point why you had to include bishop e4, because otherwise there is simply no such motive in the position, right? You don't have any kind of knight a5.
Exactly. So. So this would be an amazing move, and probably, I mean, I'm quite sure he sees the move. He's just trying to understand probably where the game is heading, around move 20 or something like that. So we have move 13. Perhaps he's just evaluating the end game. Yeah, the end game, which happens after some moves, and what to do after that. And he's reaching for a move. Yeah, I think he's going to play knight a5. I mean,
it's like
makes sense.
I'm trying to understand. I mean, some positions like that, rook, bishop e3, knight goes to... No,
not yet.
Knight's not going anywhere.
It doesn't go anywhere, right? So, well, definitely a big decision. Yeah, knight a5. Knight a5. It's an amazing move.
So that's what I mean. It's like trade on a5, go bishop e3, and then maybe that there will be a couple of awkward moments for black still. Even though now, if you do your thing with bishop e4, bishop d5, bishop e4. So my point was, like, if black somewhat naively takes on c5 and then trade, it's never too much for white, but it might be something, because I'm getting both open files. Then if queen, say, leaves to e7, I'm doing this.
This is a classic slight advantage in the catalog.
The most favorite, it's the favorite thing of every Catalan player, to get something like that and to have basically a free shot at winning the game. Okay, if it works, it works. If not, then okay, you will have to defend for another 40 moves and maybe you'll have a draw. Right, but I believe after bishop e3, well, first of all, bishop d5 does look somewhat disturbing. Yeah, to put the queen on c2 is not to everyone's liking, but even if not bishop d5, black is not in a rush to take on c5. He can first play rook c8, maybe, you know, in some positions, just to go knight d5, trying to trade the bishop. Should be more than fine for black.
At least so it seems. So definitely the best white is hoping for is to go for some kind of a better endgame. So knight takes on a5
play.
It is on the board, right?
Queen a5 played, yeah.
So queen a5, and we can expect... I don't think that bishop d5, bishop e4 is a possibility for a draw, because white can always play this queen d3 and queen b5.
Ah, yeah, yeah,
So
right.
there's no way to force
So it's like,
a draw
for instance,
white.
bishop e3 once again. I'm honestly not sure if bishop e3 is the best move in the position, but just to try bishop d5, bishop e4. If black is trying to do that, there is, yeah, quite an unpleasant move. Queen to b5, and then if you trade, you open the file for the rook, and you're not getting the c5 pawn back.
Yeah, so this looks quite unpleasant for black. Perhaps we can switch to another game. I mean,
Yeah, we have Mamedyarov Duda, where it looks like Mamedyarov is getting somewhere. And as well, there have some developments in Karjakin's game against Wesley So. But first, let's check Mamedyarov. After knight e1, Duda decided to trade the queens on b3, ab3, knight to a6, c takes, rook a5. And for very, very long time, there haven't been a move played by Jan-Krzysztof.
I don't like this, to be honest. In terms of for black,
It's like, well, the feeling is like taking on b3, it's almost always wrong. Unless you have like an immediate solution to this problem. You don't want to help white basically hold this tension, right? The c4 pawn versus d5 pawn. So takes, and then it's like you can never ever take on c4 any longer. I mean, from positional point of view, unless you are winning a pawn or something, yeah? And after knight a6, there is also this awkward thing that white takes, goes rook a5, attacks the pawn, and the problem is that after e6, the bishop on f5 might be in danger, right? So
something was
f3,
misevaluated, I would
h3,
imagine.
and g4, right?
Yeah.
I think f3 is already quite an annoying move.
Or h3,
Or you start with h3, yeah.
I don't know what is more accurate, but I do not like this choice. I mean, well, perhaps it's still within the opening ideas, standard ideas. I'm not exactly familiar with that, but voluntarily opening the A file for white and then position the knight on A6, I understand his idea. I mean, the idea was very simple, right? I mean, you take queen takes on B3, you gain the square on B4.
So you want to put the knight on b4 and possibly support it with a5 later on. It's a nice outpost.
It looks logical, right? And look at what Shak played. He played c takes on d5, which is like a paradoxical move, right? You are left with two double pawns on the b file, and black still keeps his outpost on b4. But after rook a5, it's not so easy to make a move, because I would imagine something like knight c7 is met by bishop f4.
Yeah, bishop f4.
So what are you going to do about it? The pawn on d5 is sort of hanging. So maybe you need to, I don't know, maybe you need to sell the pawn somehow on a7. I would imagine at least. Somehow sell the trade on c7 and give up the pawn on a7 and try to prove that it's a draw. But
maybe,
but
like
exactly.
b6 maybe.
Maybe b6.
Some tactics like this.
But then again, yeah, and then knight
b6, if I'm taking here, you take on a5, and then it seems that you hold the pawn, right? Bishop d8, rook d8.
Right.
And that's acceptable for black. But
probably it is acceptable, yeah.
Yeah, knight c7.
Although knight c7, bishop f4, b6, you can always retreat with the rook.
Yeah, you can say, fine, I'm moving away.
Or rook a2, or rook a3, because I can double the rooks always on the...
Yeah, maybe you want to double on a file, that's the other thing. But even, my kind of train of thought was that, just go back. Knight e6, I'm putting the bishop on e5, and this also seems to be very pleasant, right? Sometimes the pawn will just march forward, b4, b5 now.
Let's not forget about the bishop takes on f6 and knight takes on d5,
there is always a threat of capturing here and then taking on d5. So it seems quite unpleasant for Duda, and that's why he's already thinking for quite a while.
How much time is he actually on the clock? He's been spending half an hour
half an hour.
Half an hour after this, I mean, he understands this is a crucial moment, or perhaps he realizes that I misplayed something, so what should I do about this? So how to come up with the best practical plan not to fall into greater trouble. He probably knows at this moment he is worse. There's no question about that. He understands it. He's such a great player. He feels these nuances of the position very, very carefully. But now he has to find a proper way to continue in the game and not to fall into greater trouble.
So, like, knight... Can it be like this? Knight b4, rook b5, I assume, right?
Yeah, rook b5, I think that's the point.
You play a5, and white, say, takes on b7. Oh, it's still annoying somehow. The e7 is hanging.
But at least black is active. I would imagine you could choose something like this. I mean...
Yeah, it feels like the knight on b4 at least is to the point, yeah. And maybe, like, there is a square for the bishop on c2 in some lines. But still, white is pawn up, seems to be very happy, and then potentially a5 as well might be targeted. Bishop f4, rook a1, yeah. Well, bishop f4, I saw sort of, yeah, rook b7, first of all, e7 is hanging, so black will have to spend some move on, I don't know, playing e6, which leaves the bishop once again in some danger, or protecting it with the king doesn't feel right. Then in this case, bishop f4, so that b8 is controlled, and you cannot exchange the active rook. Then rook a1 is...
Look at Jan-Krzysztof, he is not happy. I mean, you can see it on the board. He is not happy. He is not happy. He's spending so much time on this move. He's not happy. I would imagine, I don't know what's going on in his head, but I would imagine if I'm spending half an hour, I'm still not sure what to continue, and I have a worse position. So I start to question my decisions, which I already made before, and I need to come up with something. So,
and then remember we were discussing, like, up to 20 minutes you can justify by, like, position being very complex. Up to 20 minutes thought, yeah. So position is very complex, and you have to calculate a lot of lines, which is not necessarily the case here. It's not such a complex position in terms of calculation. Yeah, there are lines to calculate, but it means, usually if you think for more than half an hour and your family name is not Grischuk, you're not Alexander Grischuk, that's a special case, that usually means that you are not happy with your options and you're trying to, kind of persuade yourself, so I have to do this, even though I don't like it. Like Topalov's capture on c6 versus Nakamura, right? I mean, you give away such a powerful bishop, that we are talking about classical game between Topalov and Nakamura, which ended in a draw, game 2. Yeah, but you kind of trying to convince yourself, I don't have better options. So there is a feeling.
I'm out of good ideas for Jan-Krzysztof, and at the moment it looks like also he doesn't exactly know what to do. So I would imagine he is gonna go for something active, try to sell the pawn for the highest price possible, and seek for some kind of activity. But he is in dangerous waters. Obviously, he is not lost, but he is in very unpleasant situation right now.
Yeah, well, and I'm checking the time spent by players on each move. And it's quite interesting, because after rook d8, rook d1, which is known to be one of the main moves, took Mamedyarov 7 minutes to play. Then, after bishop f5, knight e1 was played very quickly. So here you'd start to suspect in this position that Mamedyarov possibly had a few opening ideas ready, and he was choosing between them, so what to play. After rook d1, bishop f5, knight e1 was played, within a minute. Queen b3 doesn't give you too much choice, so you take quickly. And after knight a6, it took Shakhriyar another 17 minutes before he decided to take on d5. So what I'm starting to suspect, that rook d1 and knight e1 was the preparation, and Duda's reaction to take on b3 to play knight a6 was not looked up by Mamedyarov team, and that means it's not the best, by far not the best move. Because usually what you do when you're preparing, you prepare all the lines that's suggested by computer, and you also try to take a look at all the human, it's like, I have this position on the board, what comes to my mind first? To go h6,
Yeah, so potentially sometimes you have this knowledge, for example, okay, there are these 2 or 3 good moves, and this move was not among the top choices of the computer, and a good player thinks there must be a reason. So what is the reason why this move was not among the top choices? And you spend the time trying to understand, but there has been a finish in a game, so it would seem Wesley So against Sergey Karjakin, they're arguing or something.
They made a draw. I mean, there is nothing to argue. Well, everyone's happy.
Wesley So didn't look very happy. But
Queen D2. Well, maybe they were discussing the colors for the tiebreaks. Well, they just made sure that we are working tomorrow, so we already have one tiebreak.
Well, we thank the players for that.
Absolutely. So Wesley So and Karjakin will play a tiebreak tomorrow. There will be a second tiebreak for both of them.
Yes. And also in the meantime, for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, it's a second free day. Actually, it does make a difference in the end.
So Queen D2 was played. Exchange on D2 happened. Knight G4. And this is a bit surprising. Wesley So went to play Bishop E7 in this position. So Bishop E7, Knight E7 check, King to H8, Rook HE1, Knight G5, Rook A to D1, a draw for. Not quite sure.
Why? I do not really follow, because at least visually speaking, white looks just
Yeah, I mean,
better.
it still feels more comfortable for white. And, well, if anything, I'm ready to question, do you really need to go Bishop E7 in this position? Yeah, I understand, like, our move Rook E1 might be far from perfect, but again, black is not that comfortable, like all of his pieces heading towards E5.
Actually, this Bishop E7 looks quite logical, because at least the automatic exchange of the pieces, and the thing is that black, it can be problematic for him to keep a piece on E5, because if he plays Knight D to E5, potentially at some moment H3 might be a problem. If you play Knight G to E5, then what do you do about the development of the pieces of the Knight of D7, of the Bishop on C8? I think that's the point.
Yeah, so he puts the Knight on E5, but after Rook A D1, he just offered the draw.
That I do not understand, because visually speaking, white is better, because I want to play King C3, activate my king, put the bishop
away to E2 or F1,
away,
depending.
Bishop F1 or Bishop
and
C2,
then you open the
C2.
D file, yeah.
Yeah, and then you take the D file. At least it would seem that white is definitely better, but perhaps he was afraid of something like F6, and black is so solid.
Maybe you can do this.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
F6,
and
King
after
C3.
King C3, something Knight D7, wherever it goes. But it cannot go everywhere, I don't know.
Yeah, then you take a Knight G6. Okay, maybe the players will explain themselves, because we are ready for an interview with Karjakin and Wesley So, and we are still puzzled why the draw was offered, why the draw was agreed.
Yeah, actually, Queen A5 was very natural.
Sergey Karjakin and Wesley So, thank you very much for joining us after your draw. First question, Wesley, were you surprised by this C5 move in the opening?
Well, actually, yeah, I was, because, okay, Sergey, I look at Sergey's games with the names of F3, which Mamedyarov, played against him many times, and also in Croatia. Okay, so I thought I'd improve something over his game against Mamedyarov in Croatia, and thought white has some chances. But then I noticed that in every single game, Sergey plays a different line against F3 himself. So I thought, okay, I'll look at all the moves that he's played, but now he played something new again. And black has simply many good possibilities against F3. And in the game, okay, I thought I'd play this and black would probably equalize somewhere. But I didn't look at C5, D5 castle. I only look at ED5 first. So again, castle, I wasn't sure what to do, so I played Bishop D3. Maybe it's not very good. Maybe Bishop D3 is not very good, so I have to play something else, like E5.
yeah, bishop d3, and we both played normal, bishop d6, and I think I have to play bishop g5, otherwise white is just worse, because knight g4 is coming. And I don't know if black could play better, but in the game, what Sergey played was most solid, and after the queen exchange, I think the endgame is pretty much equal, because he has a very nice outpost on e5, but at the same time, my king is very active, and I have some plans on the queen side. So, yeah, I thought draw and do the rapid some more. We'll see what happens.
Sergey, so how many more weapons do you have against f3 in view of the upcoming tiebreak?
Well, we will see, because we're discussing some openings with Wesley, but in fact, I mean, some of the openings can be played again, because we still have to play tomorrow, and I cannot say everything. But basically, of course, I made some preparation, and I was quite satisfied in my position out of the opening. I don't know if I played perfectly the best moves or not. It's hard to say, because the computer might show some nuances, but basically I felt like the endgame should be fine for me.
Both of you are tough competitors, of course, in tiebreaks. Are you both looking forward to it?
Well, we don't have a choice. We have to look forward to it.
Yeah. One weird thing about the Grand Prix is sometimes you can need some good fortune, because you can play very strong people on round 2, and I don't know. Like, I think if Duda beats Shak in the match, and if one of us wins, then we'll play Duda. But actually, I played Duda in the very first round in Moscow. So sometimes play stronger people, and sometimes play weaker people. And also, the point system is you gain more points if you win the quarterfinals or the semifinals. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. Obviously. Sergey is on fire with the Armageddon and stuff.
So you'll make sure to avoid it?
Well, I don't know, or I'll make sure to get there also.
All right, thank you very much. Good luck tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so, well, 2 games finished after 2.5 hours, and we already have one player in the semi-final, and we are assured of having a tiebreak tomorrow, so we couldn't ask for much more. Still, there are 2 games going. Jan-Krzysztof Duda just made his move after more than half an hour thought in this, which seems to us very unpleasant position after rook a5. He did go for knight c7, one of the moves we were looking at, and we agreed it doesn't look that nice for black.
Doesn't look very good indeed. And before we switch on to these games, I'd like very shortly to mention that in case you, the viewers, have some questions you would like to be answered, you can always write a question at either FIDE official YouTube channel, or you can just type the question, so if you'll have the time, we'll try to review it and answer you here in the live studio, or also the World Chess YouTube channel, and we are monitoring at least from time to time the chat, and if there is an interesting question, we'll try to find the time and to answer it.
Yeah. So we are monitoring but not moderating the chat. Be nice and polite, guys. But yeah, your questions are welcome, and we'll try to answer as many as we can. Right, so rook a5, knight goes to c7 indeed. Then once again, to remind you, the line we were looking at was bishop f4, after which if you move the knight, I assume white simply takes, right? I mean, I don't have to. I can theoretically play bishop e5, but I don't see the reason not to take. So takes on d5.
Probably.
Pawn up.
I did not even calculate this, to be honest, but there might be.
Yeah. You mean on d4?
On d4, there might be some problems with the pawn.
So maybe there is nothing wrong with just putting the bishop on e5. Yeah. And once again, d5's hanging. Bishop f6 and d5's hanging.
But if I see correctly, Jan-Krzysztof has removed his jacket.
Yeah.
So I sort of remember this old famous story. Was it who was it played? Mikhail Tal between Paul Keres, right? The legendary game. Mm-hmm. When Tal made a very interesting sacrifice and I might be mistaken with the details, but I think the point was that Paul Keres was thinking for like a good 30 or 40 minutes. Then he took off the jacket, he accepted the sacrifice and won the game in great fashion. And then Tal confessed after the game he had foreseen everything, but except
I've blundered one thing. Yeah, you'll take off the jacket.
You'll take off the jacket, so that was the decisive factor. Okay, but jokes aside, I mean, so Jan-Krzysztof is very much concentrated and trying to save the game at least.
Yeah, right. And in the other game, no move, it seems, from... No, that's my silly analysis. That's not the actual position. No move from Yangyi after the exchange on a5. That's speaking of Yangyi versus Grischuk. Here, we're still at the very... Let's say right after the position, right after the opening. It's not like fully defined yet. We can't really say like if White will have at least a minimal advantage or nothing's going to happen. Well, seems that Black should be able to equalize comfortably.
Yeah, it's difficult to tell how the game will proceed. So perhaps, I don't know, we can use the time and slightly share with you some details what's going on in the Mikhail Tal Rapid tournament. Lucas was here in the studio.
Yeah.
He said that right now in Riga there is additionally going on the Rapid and Blitz tournament in memory of the 8th world champion Mikhail Tal from Riga, and two players from the Riga Grand Prix who lost in the first round. They are David Navara and Nikita Vitiugov. They actually joined the other participants, and they're right now playing this Rapid tournament. And just among the names who have come to play in Riga, who are not here in the Riga Grand Prix, it's just, I could name a few. It's Vladimir Fedoseev, it's Alexei Shirov, it's Kirill Georgiev, Alexander Khalifman, Vladimir Onishuk. There's so many great and strong players. So, I mean, this is also yet another fantastic spectacle. Not to mention, there is also the children tournament coming up. What were the dates? I think it was from 20th
Yeah, from
July.
20th of July, which is known to be like International Chess Day. Yeah. That's when we will have the semi-finals tiebreak, by the way. Let me assure you, there won't be two decisive matches in classical chess in the semi-finals. So on 20th, we will miss the beginning of the chess tournament because we will be busy in the studio commentating. But the children's tournament is coming up as well.
Yeah, it's going to be held right here in the Latvian
National
Library, right here, and the children will have the opportunity to see the grands from all over the world playing here. I mean, who is left here actually?
Yeah, it won't be too many.
Won't be too many, but hopefully somebody stays around. I mean,
Maxime will surely be there, I believe.
Yeah, he will.
Okay,
he should be.
So, I mean, he's in the semi-final. You don't leave the semi-final. Well, right, we'll see. By the way, trying to recognize Mamedyarov and. No, who was the second top seed? Maxime Vachier-Lagrave is the top seed,
Anish Giri, wasn't it?
And Anish Giri was there.
I think so.
So Mamedyarov and Vachier-Lagrave, they are in the different parts of the net, I believe, right? So Maxime is waiting for, if I'm not mistaken, Maxime is waiting for Wesley So and Sergey Karjakin to determine his opponent. But again, I might be confusing. And then the winner of Mamedyarov Duda will play with the winner of Yangyi Grischuk.
Yeah, so either way, it's going to be very tough matches, and so we'll see how it will turn out. And actually, I just wanted yet another time to continue this discussion. What FIDE Vice President Lucas Turley mentioned here in the studio that world champion Magnus Carlsen, he has agreed to play in the Grand Swiss. So it's actually quite a big topic. And so what to make of this? I mean, the the Grand Swiss is part of a qualification for the candidates tournament. And Magnus Carlsen plays in the Grand Swiss tournament. So what to make of it? Does it happen?
Well, it's very good news. Very good news for the players because now second place is qualifying for the candidate.
Right.
No, I'm kidding, of course. Yeah. Well, it's nice of him, of course, and it will obviously give a great. Well, it's a great contribution to the image of this Grand Swiss. Yeah, but on the other hand, well, there might be
some affection of who is going to qualify. Yes, that there might be an unlucky pairing. Well, an imaginary situation. So Magnus is not doing all that well. So before the last round, he didn't yet win the tournament, right? And then imagine the situation: there are 4 players on the same score. One of them Magnus Carlsen, and you are among them as well, and you are the unlucky one who is not playing with the other guy, but you are facing the world champion.
Well, somebody has to play against him, right?
Someone has to play against him.
But to be honest, I like this idea from one part, because you cannot agree with the point. I mean, you can divide the tournaments in 2 categories. There's a tournament with Magnus Carlsen, and there's a tournament without Magnus Carlsen. So the participation of the world champion, it adds something special for the tournament.
Absolutely, yeah. Of course, it will be, as I said, like a great contribution the true world champion can give to such a tournament. Well, the funny part is if he wins and he takes part in the candidates, because technically, I believe he's allowed.
I'm not sure, but I don't think they'll actually allow him. That would be funny. He would play in the candidates and do what? Qualify for the world championship match against himself?
Yeah, but I think that there was, once again, I might be making the whole thing up, but I think there was a discussion on Facebook, like, obviously no one in, say, sane state of mind will do that, but like FIDE rules were not, there was no, like, it was not prohibited. Right. So theoretically, the world champion could have taken the part in the candidates. And then he would probably, in Magnus's case, he can claim that I'm qualifying by rating. Right, okay. He didn't lose in the World Championship match, because we have one of the qualification spots goes to the one who lost in the World Championship match. He didn't lose in the World Championship match. He cannot go to candidates like that, but by rating, he can qualify.
Yes, of course he won't. So rest assured that's not going to happen. Magnus just likes to play chess, and so does... I mean, he also likes to play in the World Cup. At least once he tried to play, not exactly successfully. I do not know is he gonna play in this year's World Cup, which is also a possibility directly to qualify for the candidates tournament. But don't worry, he is not gonna play in the
even
candidates.
If he qualifies, he won't play there. But it would be funny. Okay, he can't really do it anymore because he doesn't take part in the Grand Prix. But imagine him kind of qualifying from all the ways possible, right? So kind of finishing in the final of the World Cup, winning the Grand Swiss, taking one of the 2 first spots in the Grand Prix, and then obviously it's for 7 years already he's qualifying by rating.
So technically that would mean he would have 3 spots in the candidates tournament.
3 to 4 spots in the candidates. Yeah, and then sell him.
I mean, what can you do? I mean, he's such a great player.
And then you sell him. Okay, meanwhile, no news. I mean, some moves, but no news in Mamedyarov Duda. Well, this is not the position, but that is. After bishop f4, b7, b6. That indeed is the idea of Jan-Krzysztof Duda. And as Artus correctly pointed out, you don't need to go to a1. You can choose between a3 or a2 in order to be able to double the rooks on the a file.
I think rook a3 actually makes most sense because it indirectly defends the pawn on b3, assuming the knight on e1 at some point jumps somewhere, I don't know,
yeah, and
e5.
Then imagine, I mean, first of all, I don't see the way for black not to lose the d5 pawn. Maybe this is the way not to lose the d5 pawn. So you just go there. If the knight is taken, you recapture with the knight.
Actually, it makes sense being stubborn, not to give up the pawn, because everything else just looks bleak. Although also this position doesn't look exactly great for black, but at least black is somehow holding. There's always this eternal question, what to do? I mean, when you're in worst position, what should you do?
Yeah, it's like, well, we were told like you should seek an active counterplay, but now with computers, very often you understand that when you go for an active counterplay, that's actually the quickest way to lose, because your counterplay objectively never works, and against such a strong players, yeah, they would just find the correct way. Right, but still, after knight f8, I do prefer white, of course, and even like some some simplistic approach that at some point I play e3 just to make sure that d4 pawn is not hanging. If anything, I'm swapping on c7 and go rook a1, and once again, it's just like white better for free, right?
I can imagine him playing this because at least directly, I do not see a continuation, which is also important because rook d to a1 is probably impossible because the pawn on d4 is under attack.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out. Like takes, and the thing is, black has e5. Yeah,
maybe, e5 is just good, right?
Black has e5, and somehow. I'm not even sure if I'm getting to this pawn on d5.
Yeah,
looks very.
So this looks more or less all right, and at least after this knight f to e8, it's some kind of a practical resource. Black is in trouble definitely, but at least immediately I do not see how white can do some real damage on the spot.
Yeah, so therefore maybe to start with e3, it's unlikely that white bishop will ever be in trouble, right? And let's not forget those knights, they are somewhat stuck, right? So the knight from c7 is not moving because the d5 pawn is hanging, the other knight, well, you could try to put it on d6, but still the pawn can be taken. Yeah, so knights are not moving.
Something like e6, I would imagine.
Yeah, e6, so at least this pawn is no longer hanging.
And maybe it's not so bad after all, because after e6 you include bishop f8 as an additional resource, and you just need to make a couple of moves.
Chase the rook away. Yeah, right.
I think that the best bet for black is somehow to give up the a7 pawn. I don't know if it falls
at some point,
yeah. At some point, and then just try to hold the position with one b pawn against two b pawns. And
yeah, could be. Could be, but Mamedyarov still didn't make a move after b6. I'm wondering if he's looking at, some lines like this, takes, and then say takes d8, takes d8 and goes like rook a1, which is unlikely to bring him something serious, but he might be winning a pawn nevertheless.
But doesn't look exactly logical.
Yeah, you go e6, yeah.
Yeah, e6 and then
rook a5 and you go rook b8.
Yeah, you activate all your pieces. I mean, Shak is too experienced. He understands the value of activity, even bishop f8.
I mean, it is an extra pawn for white, but it's not the position you want to play.
Right. No, I mean, black is too active here.
Yeah,
probably he can save the game. Mm-hmm. But look at this. Mamedyarov just played rook a5 to a1.
Yeah, so he played rook a5 to a1.
This is slightly unexpected. There must be something what he didn't like. I imagine it was combined together. I mean, after rook a3, rook f to e8, combined with the idea of e6 and bishop
e6
f8.
And bishop f8 at some point will win black a tempo, right?
Yes, and I think that's his point. I mean, so that the rook on a3 is not under attack, but there's yet another downside of this plan is that white can no longer create a battery on the A file and target.
So he cannot double, yeah. Maybe the whole plan is not to double, but just to say to play b5, b4, and then who knows, maybe play b5 one day.
But this is too slow, don't you think?
that feels slow, but still, as long as I keep the idea of trapping the f5 bishop. Because my move e3 was not that great, the fitting is. And here after e6, I might still switch back to this idea of kind of trapping the bishop. And as long as black cannot play e6, he's still not perfectly comfortable.
Right. I mean, definitely there was something what Shak did not like after rook a3, which I'm sure it was his first choice, but then he was looking further in the lines and he found something which he wasn't sure, which he didn't like, so he decided, okay, rook a1 is going to be the safe choice, and I mean, he also is not obliged to win, right? I mean, draw is good.
Absolutely. So he'll try to play for a win, but yeah, if it doesn't work, there'll be a tiebreak tomorrow. Situation with the time, 10 more minutes for Mamedyarov, so it's 48 for Mamedyarov and 38, possibly a bit less for Duda, because he is thinking, and the timer I have here, it only updates after the move.
Right.
And Precisely one move was played in Grischuk game against Yangyi. It's a very, very slowly developing game. So Grischuk, to remind you, Grischuk took more than half an hour to play bishop e4. And then in this position, 25 minutes by Yangyi to go knight e5. So what do we do with black?
I think the idea is obvious. He either wants to jump with the knight on c6 or put the typical knight d3.
Knight d3, the Catalan knight, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know which one of those is going to happen. I would imagine knight d3 is the safer choice.
So we probably take as black, yeah.
Just in case some checks for the king on along the diagonal. Although it does look a bit artificial. This
well, the question is, I mean, how do I navigate further? Like queen takes or
queen, or maybe just play bishop f4, maybe.
Yeah, if queen takes, that's what I thought. Bishop f4, and then once again, for instance, in this case, queen c6 is annoying. Yeah,
knight d3 is probably too early. There is this idea in the Catalan, but not right.
Yeah, but I wanted to mention that queen d5 takes. Despite looking absolutely equal, it might not be absolutely equal because white somehow gets some tempo in e4 and then bishop to e3.
Yeah, what looks slightly better.
Yeah, the knight is not very comfortable. But knight d3, there is queen c6 and I believe rook c8, rook d8, something like that. But yeah, indeed, after queen takes c5, there is bishop f4, it seems. Unless g5, no, g5, rook c1.
Yeah, rook c1, knight c6 is incoming.
Rook c1, yeah. Well, actually, the more I look at this, I kind of don't want to take on c5 with the queen.
Yeah, but what does one do about it? Because perhaps, okay, bishop g2, I don't think it really changes much. I
yes,
think
it takes.
Probably should be included, but...
Can I start with this for whatever reason? Yeah, it's like rook c8 while stopping knight c6. That's the move I don't want to see, but still feels somewhat more pleasant for white.
Yeah, it does. I mean, something like still the same idea: bishop f4 and rook c1. So the black squared bishop for black is slightly passive compared to white's bishop, and the knight on e5 potentially can exploit the typical weakness in the Catalan on c6 as soon as the c pawn goes away.
at some point, yeah.
And white is even maybe looking at some better endgame because those pawns on b4 for black and pawn on a7, they might become an easy target, and the question is, where is black's counterplay? And Grischuk obviously knows this. I mean, all of this is standard idea. He's just trying to understand how to be accurate, how to not to miss anything. And this is what he is thinking about.
Yeah, so once again, we were looking at this, takes, and we said bishop f4. Yeah, right. No knight d5, luckily. Or no, there is knight d5, in fact, yeah? There is knight d5.
So you have the idea that knight d7 is met by queen c6.
Knight d7, queen c6,
yes.
Yeah, but rook c1, and now I'm in trouble.
Yeah, because after knight takes on f4, g takes on f4, white has two active pieces. The black rooks are on a8 and f8. They're very passive. The white's pieces very quickly invade the back rank of black's position.
Yeah, it's like queen b6 perhaps is the only move not to lose the material immediately. Or, I mean, there are not too many moves anyway. It's b6 or a5. Queen a5 allows knight c6, queen b6. I would be thinking even this is better.
Or
it's
rook
not
d7.
forced. Yeah, rook d7 is of course an attractive move, but the point I want to bring that this looks very, very similar to Rebli-Karpov, one of the, like Catalan endgames where we all had seen, and it's basically the model game for this kind of endings. It's Rebli-Karpov, which I'm not sure has happened from the Catalan, by the way. Possibly it was some Queen's Indian.
Might be, yeah.
Yeah, so white has, well, more space. The king is more active, controls both files, and then somehow, all of those pawns are targets. well, potentially the rooks are invading, so this would be a very, very pleasant scenario, and especially, the game that you don't want to risk too much with white, and this is, of course, involves zero risk.
Right. So Yangyi looks in great shape. I mean, he is ahead of time, at least a good 20, almost 25 minutes. He has the better position. He has the white color. He's doing great in the tournament. So who knows? Perhaps we'll see another upset today, another unexpected result, because Grischuk is, I would say, one of the most, among the favorites in the tournament. He did well in the Moscow Grand Prix. He's right now playing in the second round. He's fighting very hard for the candidates. And I don't believe that Yangyi really is setting himself goal to qualify for the candidates, but who knows? I mean, if he plays fantastically, it's possible.
Yeah, once again, it comes, well, we can bring up back this topic about what does it take to qualify for the candidates from the Grand Prix, because it feels essential to win at least one event, right? I mean, it's such a big gap between, it's like 9 points or 8 points for the first place, I believe. Yeah, well, Yannick Pelletier has scored 9 because he has scored 1 bonus point for winning one of the matches in the classical time control.
There was a bit complex system, but the point being, you're absolutely right. I mean, it really is important to win an event because you win some extra points, and with such a tough competition, and there are, if I remember correctly, 2 spots qualifying from the Grand Prix.
Qualifying from the Grand Prix.
From 4 tournaments. I mean, 3 tournaments plays every player, but 4 tournaments in a row. And this is very difficult. I mean, even for such high-class players as Alexander Grischuk and Yangyi, this is such a difficult task to do. And
well, Grischuk so far is, well, he was the finalist in Moscow, and now he advanced to second round. So, well, at least he is the one who does the best from those guys who have taken part in both tournaments, right?
Right. Yeah. So he is thinking about his possibilities. What is going on in the game between?
Oh well, Mamedyarov, Duda. There were a couple of moves played. Yes. So look, Rook A to A1. Knight Fe8, indeed, and Knight D3. Very straightforward. Well, he's trying to get his knight to B4 or
Obviously.
E5.
Right.
Gives black a chance to take on D3, but this is worse. Well, maybe not terribly worse, but it feels being worse.
Yeah, so probably black does not really want to allow this maneuver, knight d3 to b4 to c6, and it looks also painful. So what do you do?
Yeah, so the question is, what happens if black tries to take this pawn?
I think the same, knight b4.
Knight b4 anyway.
So you also want to take on d5, and bishop takes on c3.
Bishop c3 would just take bc3 and say, yeah, we don't care.
Yeah, and the c3, c4 threat is incoming.
Knight c6, c4 is here, yeah.
This is something what a good player actually never considers. I think it was Vladimir Kramnik who once said, I think I read a quote somewhere, the greater the mastery, the greater the restrictions, right? I mean, usually a great player, he sees obviously a lot more than an average player, but he immediately discards so many moves. And I would imagine
that's like bishop c3. You
just don't
stop for 10 seconds in this position. This we are not entering.
Actually, and sometimes they are wrong because
sometimes you miss the really, really impressive tactics because it looks so weird that you don't really consider this. And as you brought up Kramnik's name. Famous game from the match between Kasparov and Kramnik, the Berlin, and Kramnik introduced the Berlin line, the Berlin defense in this match, basically. It was first appearance on the very high stage. And in one of the games, Kasparov had G2, G4 move, which would give him a great advantage. But the problem was that there was, I cannot show it, so it was white pawn on h3, white pawn on g2, and black's pawn on h4. So g2, g4, if black doesn't take it, he's busted. I mean, it's a huge advantage in the end. If black takes it, there was some tactical trick, white wins on the spot. But simply you do not consider g2, g4 because black takes, and you think, no, I'm spoiling my structure. Now my structure is terrible, even though the calculation wasn't all that complex. So sometimes discarding the moves because they look bad is not a good idea, even for the very best of us. But yeah, I agree. In this particular position, it's not that I'm trying to defend bishop c3. It doesn't look good any way you slice it.
So very often, even very good players, and especially very good players, they base a lot of things on their intuition and then just double, triple check it with the calculation. And why they're super GMs, they just do it so much better than we average GMs.
All right, so knight d3, and for a second time in this game, it seems that Duda is presented with a very, very unpleasant choice when seemingly none of the options look really attractive.
So what are his options? I mean, either he takes on d3, either he plays a5, or he makes random other moves, which I don't know. I mean, knight b4, knight a6 is something you do not want to see.
Knight b4, knight a6 is annoying. Knight e5 is the other thing. I mean, if you go a5, I believe.
Yeah, so knight e5 doesn't change much.
Once again, yeah, we go there. So, well, maybe as sad as it looks, maybe I have to take on d3, play e6, just to secure that this pawn is not weak.
And try to solidify the position.
Hope to hold this one, even though it doesn't look all that appealing.
Yeah, because here might be even that white could play some immediate idea as e2, e4. I mean,
yeah,
it looks
e4.
very appealing.
I was looking at this one.
Yeah,
because otherwise it might be much tougher to break through, since black got rid of his f5 bishop and might even consider f5 at some point, just to cement the center. All right, so after knight d3, indeed a nice resource found by Mamedyarov. Duda is thinking, not much going on in Grischuk's game. He just played rook a to c8, one of the moves we were looking at. So we will make a quick break for some ads, and we'll be back right after that.
Yes, see you soon. Yeah, And welcome back to the studio. While Yevgeny Miroshnichenko is a short break, we have Yannick Pelletier, our press officer here in the event, and we are happy to join you here in the studio.
Thank you, Artus. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure for me too.
Yeah, so what do you think about the event? I mean, is this your first time in Riga?
No, it's my second time in Riga. I was here last year when I was coaching the Swiss youngsters at the European Individual Championship. And I had a very nice impression, actually. We were living in the Ratison, which is just a few hundred meters away from this place.
Right.
So I had seen it, but little would I have known that I would be here, sitting here a year after that.
Right. I mean, yeah. So what are your, not experience, but your impressions from the tournament so far? I mean, I and Yevgeny, we are really impressed so far what we are seeing. We really like the tiebreak section. I mean, we are impressed to see the Armageddons, and you are also yourself a very strong grandmaster, so it's also for you extremely interesting to follow. And what do you feel about this?
Yeah, it's right. Although sometimes during these rounds I have to focus on other things, and I miss some part of the action, and it's a pity. But definitely the tiebreak 2 days ago was absolutely amazing.
I mean, it's two Armageddons simultaneously.
Yeah, yes.
It's very, very rare.
It's
right?
rare, and actually, well, the star match of the day was clearly Karjakin against Giri, because they delivered such a fight, exchanging blows, and it was just fantastic. And many people usually say, you know, Sergey Karjakin, very solid, not much happening, but when he's being teased, and definitely Anish Giri made a great job in trying to win that match, and Karjakin was pushed until the end, and they well, it was a fantastic match, but the others were no less interesting as well. 4 of them ended a bit earlier in the first series of 2 rapid games, but with interesting fights, and of course Aronian against Yangyi also until the Armageddon was a great fight. So far, this event is very, very thrilling, and we also have Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, who seems to be on fire. At least he uses the opportunities given to him. He won the first match 1.5, and the second match, well, today.
He doesn't even in the tiebreaks, right? He just decides it in the classical games.
Yeah, which is actually also important if we take into account the point system of this FIDE Grand Prix. Whenever you win a match before the tiebreak, you get a bonus point.
Right.
So it can be very important.
Well, definitely, that's something to think about, and I think it's extremely interesting system, because normally, okay, you could always make quick draws in the classical games, then switch off to the tie breaks, but if you get a bonus point, I mean, it's something to think about. So.
For sure. I mean, well, certainly everyone would like to get those bonus points, and nobody wants to give them away. So, of course, sometimes matches end in just a tie, 1-1 after classical games, and nothing to be done. But, well, for sure it does encourage players to fight and not leave it up to the tiebreak.
Right. Yeah, I mean, yesterday I was browsing through tweets, what players are tweeting about the tournament. Not so many of them at the moment, so I immediately checked what Anish Giri is tweeting. He is notorious for his tweets and sometimes sarcastic remarks. But again, I mean, this time he tweeted about his match against Sergey Karjakin, that it was an epic match, and he is sorry, obviously, that he lost. But funnily enough, he admitted that it was probably not the most exciting tiebreak of the day, because during the day when they were playing the tiebreak against Sergey Karjakin, there was the legendary tennis match between Roger Federer, your countryman, playing against Novak Djokovic. And I believe everyone else in the studio in the free time was also having a glimpse to the tennis match and following how it was going.
Yeah, I have to admit, we kept an eye. We had someone here with a computer and the match going, an outside person actually. And he chose his day right to be there in the press center, because we did follow the match as well, and it was a fascinating match, and well, in the end, there has to be a winner. It was Djokovic. But just to mention, because that Sunday was not just about tennis and chess, British people will claim, otherwise just perhaps even be very furious at us, that there was also the cricket final. But I don't know much about cricket. I don't know about you.
We should probably ask Peter Svidler about it, because he's such a great expert in this area.
Indeed, yeah. I'm sure he rushed back to the hotel to watch this.
Right.
And so that was a very hot Sunday sports-wise.
Yeah. Okay. So perhaps we should go back to the games and see what's going on. We left the game Yangyi against Alexander Grischuk, and but nothing has changed here, because after 95, what was played by Yangyi, we felt that white is probably slightly better and pushing in this typical Catalan, and black responded with rook a to c8. Yannick, what do you think about this position? What are the chances for white? Is it realistic to win this at such a level?
Well, there are a few little things in this line. It's one that I analyzed once when I played a bit more actively, and the Catalan especially. And I had found a few ideas for white to play for a little something, which is the most you can hope for. And
sorry.
Yep, I'll give you the mouse if you want.
Yeah. There's something.
And so white, basically, his main asset is in long term. This knight on e5 one day will perhaps. Let me see. I have to navigate.
Yeah.
No, that's not the way. So maybe like this. Yes, will be able to install itself on d3, which is the ideal square, be it in the middle game or in the end game. I can recall fantastic end game by Ulf Andersson, who is very famous for his technique, and he made a living in the Catalan from this knight on d3, especially against the black squared bishop. And so perhaps that's the long-term asset or hope for white to have a little something in these positions. But it looks like these two bishops, g2 and e4, will be exchanged soon at some moment, so that the knight on d3 will perhaps be able to occupy this square in a stable way.
So why do you think black is postponing taking the bishop on g2? Because I and Yevgeny were looking at this position. We are thinking that black is going to automatically take on g2 and then proceed something like, I don't know, rook c8 or something. And here black played immediately rook c8. So what might be the difference?
I think he wants to wait, because if the exchange occurs on e4, then he's probably quite happy to have this knight here. Perhaps to take back on c5 later on, just in case the white knight goes to d3. So he might want to exchange them. And, well, the only real question here is whether f3 can be anything serious for white, but I quite doubt it. I mean, f3 is not what you want.
Dangerous,
so that's probably the reason why he just waits. Now, well, just a little tactic. I think I'm not very sharp these days, but I guess this doesn't really work. Because of knight takes c5, and then you eliminate the bishop anyway, so that doesn't look like anything serious. Well, bishop e3 probably in that same approach by white, who doesn't want to take the first step and exchange himself these bishops. Then bishop e3 makes sense. I mean, that's the logical move you want to play. But we'll see. Bishop g5 might be a move as well, trying to get this, get rid of the knight f6. And then, well, again, trying to bring the knight to d3 and have it there. Perhaps that could be a move. But I'm a bit, well, I'm not, let's say, I'm not really afraid for Grischuk concerning the time, because we know that he likes to consume his time and get in time trouble. I mean, I'm not saying he loves to be in time trouble, but he's quite...
well, he definitely doesn't mind it.
He doesn't mind it at all. So, but still, if I were black, I would be concerned with my clock, because, well, I think he has something like 20 minutes left or something like this. So, and the game is fully on, and we just moved by move 15. So in that sense, I would say Yangyi has perhaps the slightly better chances.
Yeah, it seems at least that white is slightly better. So we can probably switch to the second game and see what is going on there.
So that's Mamedyarov Duda. Well, I don't know what you have said about this game earlier, but I have the feeling that Mamedyarov kind of tricked a little bit his opponent in the opening with G3. And Duda simply just transposed to that Grunfeld line,
yeah,
which
so
is nice.
It seemed he wasn't exactly ready for this because what Mamedyarov played, it has been played before, and we in the studio with Yevgeny, we were thinking about that perhaps queen takes on b3 and knight a6 wasn't exactly the best decision. And we agreed that definitely white is better here, to not sure to what extent or how much, but we tried to come up with a good defensive plan for black, and we could not understand, should it be bishop takes on d3, but I see that...
He played bishop c8, in fact.
Yeah, bishop c8.
That's a very unusual way to do it, because I'm not sure the bishop will do a good job on b7. I think that's where it is heading to. Maybe he wants to play a5 and bishop a6. I don't know, but then b6 will be left a little...
Right.
Yeah, and bishop takes d3, giving up the two bishops, but then you can play e6, and the bishop on g2, unless you play e4, is also a little bit strange. So, yeah, difficult to see. But bishop c8 certainly, I mean, from outside like this, was not one of my candidate moves, I would say, but it's clear that Jan-Krzysztof Duda has something in mind here, and we'll discover that in the coming moves for sure.
All right. I mean, thank you for joining us here in the studio. It was very great to see also your expertise of these games, and I hope you'll also join us tomorrow in the studio at some time.
Well, for sure, with pleasure.
Maybe even today, who knows?
Who knows, perhaps again.
Yeah.
Well, I'm always right behind the door, and that's the press office there, so I'm very close. So anytime I'm ready to join in.
Thank you. Thank you for coming here.
Thank you, Arthur.
Yeah, in the meantime, we thank Yannick Pelletier in the studio, and we are still following the game Shakhriyar Mamedyarov against Jan-Krzysztof Duda, and we didn't exactly anticipate this bishop c8 was something we in the studio were not looking at. Shak decided to play e4, which was something we did expect, only in a different variation after bishop takes on d3, rook takes on d3. And then white might play e4, but well, I don't know, it looks slightly passive. I mean, Jan-Krzysztof has played bishop b7, at least the position has some sort of resemblance to the French. It's funny how sometimes these variations are transpositional. If only black would play after e5, we are going to have it shortly on the live board, which is right now played during the game, if black would have played e6. But instead of e6, obviously, Jan-Krzysztof played knight e6, bishop e3, and this is the actual position on the board. So it feels that definitely white is still pushing. Black has some problems, but well, we'll see how it will turn out. And we have back in the studio Yevgeny Miroshnichenko, who has joined us. And what do you think? What has changed here?
A lot has changed. I didn't expect bishop c8, to be honest. So now it looks more and more promising for Mamedyarov, I must say. Well, from the symmetrical position where he perhaps had his pieces somewhat better arranged. Now he has the space advantage, and still all of his pieces are better. So, well, I believe he's going for it. His position looks more and more attractive. So if we can have it back on the board, so that I'll actually show what has happened. e4, using the moment that black is not ready to take, I assume, right?
Well, you would imagine that there's something after
capture. Well,
bishop takes.
Just bishop takes and then rook a7.
Right.
So black is not ready to take. Black has played bishop to b7, e5, and knight d3, knight e6, and bishop e3. Well.
But still, I mean, we were looking at this position right after the opening when Jan-Krzysztof had made that perhaps dubious decision to trade the queens and play knight a6, and Shak correctly played c takes d5, rook a5, and he was thinking for half an hour, pondering about this move. But at the time, we were thinking that probably black loses the pawn at some time, and he's still not lost the pawn. He is worse, but the pawn is still there.
And f7, f5 played. That's, have to say, a committal move.
That is very committal move. I'm not sure why was it necessary, but probably in order to activate the king, somehow bring
the king closer. But at the same time, how about this bishop on g7? How on earth it's coming back to business? Because what I'm trying to say, white has some potential of developing initiative on the queen side, right? Even coming back to the idea of doubling on a file, when black plays a5, try to push b3, b4, open some files there, and the bishop remains on g7. As long as you keep the knight on e6, if you move the knight away, play e6, then it's not enough space for your knight. So basically, it is, well, the illustration of a space advantage in a nutshell, right? So, well, simply not enough space for all the pieces.
I think it's a defensive move because let's imagine if black would not have played f5 here. Shak probably wants to play f4, g4, f5. I think that's the point.
So say
something like
this.
And now f4 and g4 and f5 and then knight f4. So he probably felt that this is...
Sooner or later he will have to.
He has to. But the question is, perhaps he should have waited for f4 for white to play first and only then proceed with f5. But, I mean, these are nuances. And
the question is maybe white would try to be clever and start with g4.
Perhaps.
That's also a possibility.
Right.
Because, if you ask me, of course, I prefer to play f5 when the pawn is already on f4 because in our game as well, white might reserve this square for the knight, right? It's to play h4. I mean, I'm not suggesting this move has to be played immediately necessarily, but h4 does make sense from positional point of view, kind of increasing control on the dark squares. And whenever this knight leaves from e6, then I'm ready to put my knight on f4, once again increasing the pressure on d5.
And maybe even potentially bishop f3, king h2, rook g1, g4.
And some g4 later on, right?
And cause some trouble at the king side. So this is a thematical idea for white and rather unpleasant. So problems for Jan-Krzysztof, unfortunately, still are not over. He's definitely in a worse position, fighting for his life. I mean, to stay in the match, it's quite unpleasant. And right now, Shakhriyar Mamedyarov looks really good. I mean, to take down this match before the tie breaks.
Right. And, well, the thing with Shak, once again, I'm still under the influence of his image being like all-out aggressive player, sacrificing here and there, going for mating attacks. But he proved that he evolved as well in a very good technical player. And the way he beat Dubov from seemingly absolutely harmless position, just, well, accumulating those minor advantages and converting them in full point. So here, once again, I mean, if he is given a chance to play a nice positional game, who would bother to actually come up with, with tactics? And b3, b4, increasing his influence on the queen side, so potentially pawn can be put on b5. Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that at some point, as say, black does nothing. b5, knight b4, at some moment, knight can go to c6, and then will be supported with the other b pawn. Yeah, because to knight b4, black's only reaction will be knight to c7, right?
Well, black is in the world of hurt. I mean, look at all of his pieces, except of the knight on e6, which might be potentially placed on a good square. Bishop on b7 is so bad. Bishop on g7 has no prospects. Knight on e8 is passive. King is far away. While for white, it's so easy to increase the pressure. Like you said, I mean, b5, knight b4, target the d5, jump on c6. Oh.
Yeah, it's like I was thinking of a6 just to stop b5, to answer b5 with a5. But then that is usually the case. When your position is awkward, like any pawn move creates more and more weaknesses. And in this case, it's knight a4. You cannot guard the b pawn. So you will have to play b5 just to open, more squares for these knights. It looks terrible indeed.
Yeah, so things do not really good for the Polish player. And I'm sorry to say it for the Polish fans. I do hope that Jan-Krzysztof will prevail. But definitely the Azerbaijani player is the favorite right now.
Yeah, at the moment Mamedyarov indeed seems to be in the driver's seat. Well, to add to that, it's move 20 for Duda to make. He's on 22 minutes. Well, not a time trouble just yet, but well, in such a position you turn to consume a lot of time simply because it's not easy to come up with each move.
This is usually how it happens. I mean, even amongst very good players, a small problem becomes a big problem sometimes, because this is how they play. I mean, very good GMs, they make a small problem, make you feel uncomfortable, and you start to think for some time. There is no immediate way trying to equalize the game. And then comes yet another something what you presumably missed, and it turns out to be a big problem, and you have to find immediate solution, and you feel psychologically down, and this is when you commit a big mistake. So that's the traditional recipe for a disaster.
Yeah, bishop f8, well, so it's kind of hinting that this knight is not forever on e6. It will be moved perhaps, and e7, e6 will be played later on just to cement the, well, to protect the d5 pawn, to cement the, like for instance in this line, b5, maybe the knight goes to c7, knight b4, e6, knight c6, even though if you ask me, I'm not a big fan of black's position anyway.
Well, neither am I.
Looks terrible.
Yeah, it looks terrible. But okay, probably black is happy just to trade off the bad bishop on d7.
Yeah, just to take, to say that somehow I'll try to prevent b4, b5. Yeah, so far b5 is not possible. So some sort of an attempt to call it a fortress, but...
Oh, but this still doesn't look so bad. At least you can play like a5, rook b8 and claim that it's not breaking through, and somehow...
Yeah, or maybe, you know what, maybe... Strangely enough, maybe b5, a6, because yes, like the problem with a5 I had that in this case white goes bishop f1, kind of blocks it on b5, and make sure that the c6 pawn is safe.
But at least the knights are right now well positioned for blocking the c pawn.
Yeah, maybe a5. Yeah, but so it doesn't look hopeless, and possibly
it's not hopeless. Definitely.
Yeah, possibly Shak will look for yet another way to disturb black pieces, but yeah, it's hard to argue white is much better.
Yeah, what about even doubling the rooks now on the a file? So there's also that
rook a3
for and double the rooks.
Yeah, in case of this line, for instance, knight c7 would just bring the other, and I should have gone rook a2 because
maybe rook a2.
This, once again, this, rook a1, e6, and knight no, not e6, a6, I have to guard.
But okay, Shak played b5 already, so that's also
and then knight
great
b4,
move.
yeah.
Definitely white has a big advantage on the board, and black is suffering. What is going on in the second game?
Grischuk is down to 15 minutes with 25 more moves to play. And every single move takes him quite a lot of time. So rook a to c8, 20 minutes gone. Bishop f4, bishop takes c5, another
9 minutes.
Another 8.5 minutes, yeah.
Almost 9 minutes, right. So still white keeps an upper hand. He is slightly pushing. Objectively, black is holding, but...
Yeah, well, now I realize that's a real conflict going on about taking or not taking on e4, because if, for instance, now white takes on e4, knight takes comes with a tempo attacking f2, after knight d3, well, the bishop leaves, presumably to e7. And the good news for black that he is able to play knight c5 at some point and trade the d3 knight, which cements.
This is actually what Yannick mentioned also in the studio. I asked him, what is the difference? Why black doesn't?
Why doesn't he? Yeah.
Why doesn't he take?
Yeah, Grischuk says no. If you want, take it yourself, right? And I'm not planning to capture on g2, but yeah, now it's going to come to. Well, you know, to who has more useful moves, right? Because it seems that white might consider going rook a to c1 or something like that. Well, white, yes, indeed, he plays rook a to c1 and he's waiting for Grischuk to make yet another move.
Right.
How about crazy moves in this position? Like
crazy moves are good.
No, that's... Well, technically it is possible, no?
You want
g5, knight c4. No, it doesn't work. Yeah, my point was, well, g5 looks terrible, looks like a pawn blunder. Yeah, but in case of bishop g5, I have bishop f2 check, king takes, queen e5. I'm not losing the piece because bishop f6, this comes with a check, right? And here, yes, I dropped my g-pawn, so weakened the king, but at the same time I kind of hold the, you know, the outpost on e4, so this wouldn't be bad. The little problem with g5 is that those quirky-looking tactical moves usually do not work. Yeah, and in this case it's knight c4 attacking the queen. Queen has only legal square not to be trapped, and then
it's just a free
on
pawn.
the next move, yeah, it does look like a simply a free pawn because f6 is hanging as well.
But at least Yangyi in the meantime has won one little battle. He persuaded Alexander Grischuk that he's the one to take on g2.
Yeah,
right?
takes on g2, king g2 is on the board.
Yeah, so
but yeah, then you know what? We've only mentioned this knight d3 as the square, potential square for the knight, but at the same time, knight can be put on c4 under right circumstances, and then white plays f3, e4. Well, if white is on time to play f3 and e4 and the knight doesn't jump to d5, I don't know what has to happen for this. But if, let's say, something like that happens, this is usually a very, very good structure for white, so that the knight on f6 is restricted for a very long time. Yeah, well, the point is, of course, after any moment you play f3, knight has to go to d5.
Right, and black, in the meantime, quite quickly actually responded with queen a6.
Queen a6, yeah, because perhaps this knight c4 was always annoying, and then, yeah, just preventively moving the queen away, also attacking the e2 pawn, getting the possibility to give a check on b7. So, like, for instance, knight d3, well, black might want to give a check on b7 immediately, just to figure out where the king is going.
Yeah, but probably you don't want to play knight d3 so early because knight on e5 is so active. That
yeah, has a lot of prospects apart from landing on d3, which is not a bad square, but only one of them, and you might
Yeah, so the pawn on e2 is under attack, so how do you protect it? Normally you just want to make a good developing move, something like either rook d3 or rook c4. Or something.
Well, yeah, those... Because I wanted to say that queen on b3 no longer has a lot of job, and playing queen f3 wouldn't be bad, but there might be a problem with a4 pawn. If black can take it, which, well, is dangerous, let's agree, some bishop g5s, knight d7s, this, that.
Yeah,
but
so you would need to calculate this.
Yeah, because otherwise I think that would be comfortable for me, like to play queen f3, again, having some bishop g5 ideas, covering the long diagonal, potentially supporting the knight to c6 if the bishop leaves, or simply knight d3, this looks much more harmonious with queen on f3, not on b3. But yeah,
actually, queen f3 looks extremely interesting. I was more looking at rook c4.
Yeah, but rook c4 as well is a decent move because we are planning to double. Yeah, it's just that well, it looks interesting, but I don't know what my plan actually is after queen a4. Just mention this as an idea. Yeah, perhaps bishop g5 can be tried. Yeah. Bishop g5, but then you go bishop e7 maybe.
But there might be a fork.
Might be some tactics, yeah.
No. Can I take on f6 and play knight d7 or play knight d7 immediately?
Yeah, maybe play knight d7.
But you need to calculate what happens. Rook takes on c1.
Yeah, there is rook c1.
So there might be that.
There is also this thing takes, in which case, by the way, you might take on d1, yeah? Because I thought rook takes, queen b7 is sort of awkward.
Or queen e8.
Or you still take d1 and d1. Go to d8, yeah.
Right. But now that I'm looking at this, what about simple move knight c6 instead of the...
instead of takes and queen b7?
Yeah, just immediately play knight c6. It makes perfect sense.
Sorry, but I have to finish this line because I said, yeah, queen d1 is nonsense. It's check, queen goes back, knight c6, white wins in a very nice way, wins the bishop. Yeah, but yeah, black had some other options. This doesn't look so threatening. But yeah, queen a4, bishop g5, in case of bishop b7, knight c6. Yeah, this looks more than convincing. Because e7 is hanging, and at the very least, I'll at some point, like, if rook goes there, I'll just go rook a1 and take, yeah? And other than that, I don't see the way for black to...
There is no rook f to e8, so definitely this is extremely dangerous for black. Yeah, rook c to e8 looks so terrible.
So it's either there is some other move for black here, which once again might be not knight d7 yet, but e4 is here.
And there are various moments you need to understand what is happening after the potential fork. Knight d7, there are some pins, some problems.
f6 for black,
Yeah, this is not so easy. Not so easy. I mean, queen f3, queen a4 probably is not forced, but... Although after queen f3, I mean, this looks interesting.
Yeah,
black is not obliged to take on a4. I mean,
yeah, but if you don't take, it does feel that queen f3 improves my position a great deal, because as well, if you move the f8 rook, there might be something happening on f7.
And like you mentioned, I mean, this bishop g5 is a very serious positional threat. I mean, knight d7 is incoming. Now that I look at it, I really like it. I think it's actually more dynamic and unpleasant than the rook c4.
Yeah, but again, stopping for your rook c4, it also has, the potential threat of doubling on c-file and making the bishop leave from c5 and then put the knight on c6, yeah? And you come back to this idea of queen f3 after queen b7, if black decides to play queen b7, because I still believe that those endgames, they are very, very unpleasant. Yeah, like takes and then take with the king. And the more you swap, it feels like the pressure is easier, but at some point the king comes into play, and white plays an endgame with an extra piece because king is somewhere on e4, d3, and black king is left on g8.
But you can give so much credit for Yangyi for perfectly playing out the game so far. He managed to cause serious, okay, maybe they are not serious, but actually quite uncomfortable problems for his very much experienced opponent in the supposedly quiet Catalan. It's already a big achievement. And
it's like squeezing something out of nothing, it seems, because, a lot of games in this Catalan, what you see, c4, I mean, somewhere around this moment, let's say, when black plays c5, and then those pawns somehow getting exchanged, and they draw a grid around move 20. That was, believe it or not, but both games between Radjabov and Nakamura in Moscow Grand Prix round 1 went absolutely the same way. And something in this position, they exchange pieces and they make draw very quickly. And, Yangyi found a way. Some development in Mamedyarov Duda. After b5, indeed, knight 6 c7 was played, knight went to b4, e6, knight to c6, takes, and b5. So b5, could it be that he's planning a5, rook a6, or maybe he just wants to keep the...
b5. That is interesting. I mean, this might be possible, but I was slightly surprised that actually Shak decided to go for this line. I mean, b4, b5, knight b4, knight c6. Is this on the board, actually?
b5's on the board, yeah.
I was more expecting for him to
play a5, yeah?
No, I mean, just to push on the a file. Yeah, exactly. I mean, push for the a file. I mean, just double the rooks, because it feels a bit unnatural. I mean, this bishop on b7 is so bad, so normally you wouldn't really want to trade it, although it's probably still a great idea, but...
Somehow, yeah, it's like white still has a lot of space, And, well, 2 bishops, I'm not sure if I should count it as advantage in these positions. Like a lot of, a big part of the board is simply blocked, all the center blocked. But black is solid, yeah. Well, he's not very active, but very solid. So, well, apart from a5, which might be an idea sometime to push, to get more space on the queen side, there is also a6. And then the knight from c7, as silly as it looks there, it guards a6, it stops the c-pawn. So, no, not rook a7, that's not going to be played. Shak goes rook d1 to c1. Not really. Well, I mean, I don't really see this move being critical. It is an improvement. He guards the c-pawn. And then black might as well try to attack this. Go rook b8 and potentially a5, rook b6, rook a6. It's...
At least I see this as, okay, not obviously rook a7, but I see this as some sort of improvement for black. So yeah, I mean, we'll see how it will turn out for later. For later.
So rook b8 was played, and at some point it starts to resemble, to be honest, the previous game between those two players, where the position was of more or less the same character. It was Duda with white having the space advantage. And he, well, we didn't check, let's be honest, I didn't check this game with the computer afterwards, but there was a possibility to put the bishop on d7 in the previous game, and something very similar could happen potentially. So, not sure if Mamedyarov has squeezed maximum out of it. So, coming back to this position after bishop f8, yeah, there is a separate idea for white. I mean, not going after b5, knight b4, but just to try to double on a file, and yeah, it would be really, really hard to react with black. Once again, point being that whenever you play a6, white goes to a4, there is no way to defend this pawn other than move it forward, and then knight c5, and, well, you will not enjoy it with black. But anyway, what has happened happened, so that seems that Duda will establish some sort of a blockade and, yeah, will fight for his life. White, I believe, still has to be better. The situation with the time, 18 minutes for Duda, 26. Well, at least my thingy says it's 26 minutes, but as I said, it updates the time only when the move is made. So I suspect Mamedyarov, in fact, has less, 23, 24 minutes. Okay, and I believe, yeah, once again, we are all set and ready. And thanks once again, thanks to Yannick Pelletier for joining this time me in the studio. Yeah. And yeah, the big secret is revealed. The press room is just few meters from our commentary studio. So, well, it's very nice that Yannick comes to help us with the analysis.
My pleasure, and of course it's also good for you two to have small breaks from time to time.
Absolutely.
But this position you were talking about is maybe not that clear, is it?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the idea to jump to c6 was so good. Perhaps he could have waited a bit more, maybe rook a4 to protect the knight b4. Well, it's hard to tell, but...
so somewhere around here we were thinking like b4 is probably a clever move to stop a5, and then you start to double. And then, yeah, maybe you're right, b5, knight b4, e6, maybe there was no rush to jump to c6. He could still play rook a4.
And bishop f1, rook a1.
Bishop f1, rook a1, prepare everything, yeah. And how it's done very often in such positions, when you have a lot of space advantage, you, well, hint at the play on one wing. Let's say you put the rook on a1, bishop f1, bishop e2, and if by some miracle black survives that, then you try to open the second front, right?
That's quite
so
typical.
over here you start like h4, g4, or h3, g4. And then, yeah, what's the problem with space disadvantage, with having less space? Your pieces, it's very tough to switch them from one side to the other.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's why it's usually a clever way to try and defend when you have less space. Try and exchange knights, as they say, and then, well, pieces in general, but knights in particular, have small problems jumping from on little space.
Yeah, those knights for black, knight on e8, knight on c7, they're unlikely to jump anywhere in the nearest future.
Yeah.
But so far, the position is still closed, right? Rook dc1, rook d8 was, rook db8 was already played. Maybe it won't be easy for white to make progress. So black will have to decide at some point how to meet potential attempt to open the king side, right? White can't really make progress on the queen side, strangely enough.
It's true, yeah.
Or maybe nothing strange with that. I just
yeah. Well, we never know, but maybe black will even try something with a5. I mean, not like really attacking, because as soon as he plays b4, knight a4 comes, and that's perhaps not what he really wants. But
again, it still keeps making this rook a7 move. Yeah. So I thought the dilemma for black is to put the pawn on a6 and a6, try to represent some sort of a fortress, right? So I'm saying, yeah, knight from c7 guards a6. I don't care too much about the counterplay. Now I will put the knight on g7 in case he go g4, and I'm trying to claim that's a fortress. Or indeed to try for a bit more active approach, to put the pawn on a5, try to lift both rooks to 6th rank, attack the c6 pawn twice, see what happens, and maybe later on move a4, b4.
But this is an interesting dilemma for black, because he is in such a position that where he must already now decide whether he wants to just stay put passively with a6 and defend, or whether he wants to try and create some play as well, because it looks really depressing to just play a6 and wait, and he knows it's going to come the way you've described it. At one point g4, and white has all the time in the world to open on the king side whenever he wants. He can switch here and there, maneuver.
That's what Mamedyarov starts to do. Knight e2 apparently goes there.
Well, actually, he might want to go to c5 as well.
Yeah, might as well do this.
Although then he probably will be exchanged. And
this is interesting. Now, coming back to this plan, for instance, not playing a5, but playing a6. No, a5 is already played. Yeah. Now, what I wanted to say, that we could see one of the, games, the example games that are in the book, like Immortal Game of Zugzwang, for instance, right? So imagine the situation. Bishop gets there. Knight gets to c5. It is taken there, but what's then? Yeah, well, for simplicity's sake, I'll just skip few moves for black. Not that black doesn't have anything better, but just to illustrate what kind of position I mean. Yeah, bishop a5, and then black can barely move, and white opens the second front on the king side, and this, of course, would be disastrous. So, despite looking well, at first it seemed very solid to me. Like black plays a6 and tries to claim that this is a fortress, but perhaps he didn't have the luxury to just sit and wait.
And a5, well, another idea against the a6 is perhaps to try to move the knight to d3 and then play bishop d2 to b4, exchanging those bishops, perhaps, to kind of have
get
freedom.
The knight to d3 and then, exchange the bishops, and then the knight might get back to d3, to c5, to d7, somewhere disrupting black forces.
I mean, clearly for Duda, this is, leaving the choice for white, whether he wants to get this pleasure or that pleasure, whatever, he's going to suffer everywhere. So I think a5 is
a5, and after all, we are talking about the chess player who, when he needed a draw, went for the dragon variation. That's I'm referring to the first stage of Grand Prix in Moscow, when he was 1-0 up against Wesley So, and then being solid with black in his books, it's going for the very sharp dragon. So, and I give full credit for him to him for this, and I just mean he's not the type of player who will willingly accept this position with zero counterplay ever. So
but
a5,
actually,
knight f4.
Jumping back on that decision of his to play the dragon there, when I saw it, I was kind of first surprised, but then I thought, okay, the dragon is also very concrete. And first, there is also the surprise effect for the opponent, but this being left aside, that it's very concrete. So when you want to make a draw, sometimes it's not bad to try and force matters a little.
I agree. That's one of the possible approaches. I mean, you either know something super safe like a Petrov and you are ready to defend like a cluster of, well, tiny bit worse positions, or you can go, just like play the Sicilian and say, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready. Just, let's play sharp. No problem with that. So King F7, Shak makes another move. I haven't seen what the move was.
Hasn't come yet.
Knight to D3. Yeah, Knight to D3 anyway. So the knight gets to C5 and then you will have to decide. And I'm afraid this knight will have to be taken anyway if it materializes on C5 because Knight D7 or possibly Knight B7 as well. I mean, it's so disturbing. So.
But you know what he could play also is again Bishop D2, hitting A5. And again, trying
to force it to A4 or B4. Yeah, both of them will be some commitments for black.
Because that's an important question then to Duda. Which kind of pawn move does he want to do? B4 or A4? In both cases, you weaken a little bit your some squares. Let's say.
Right. What starts to disturb me a little in Shak's position that it seems, he's executing this knight maneuver to D3, but his G2 bishop at the moment is not that active.
Yes. And actually, some years ago, I was studying a little bit the Stonewall for black, which I eventually played in a few games, one against Mamedyarov, by the way, but that's not the point. And I was talking to Moskalenko, who has played the Stonewall perhaps all his life. And, well, he's an enthusiast when he talks about his own openings. And he would say, but, we speak about the bad bishop in the Stonewall, the white square bishop blocked by its own pawns, by the wall. But the white square bishop, light
square bishop,
from the white side on G2 is not much more active.
Yeah, where does it go?
In a way, it's true. And bishop F1 here is certainly very standard to bring it to a more active diagonal.
Yeah, but I suspect black might consider at some point lifting both rooks so that stop knight c5 because the pawn can be taken. Well,
he's going to A4.
Surprise, surprise. Black plays A4 voluntarily. Not caring too much, it seems, about the weakening of B4 square. Okay, so the game develops and maybe, the situation with the time, it's not desperate yet, but both players, Mamedyarov on 20 minutes, Duda slightly below 20 minutes, doesn't give them the liberty to think, to delve deep in the position. You make reasonable moves and, you just hope it works.
So, let me ask a question. Does he want to play perhaps even B4 and A3 himself?
Okay, that's what I was not initially thinking of, such a bold moves, let's say. But the more I look at it, why not B4 and then all of a sudden you have the square for the knight on B5 if allowed. Then knight B5 and the other knight comes to C7. And pardon me, but who is better? I mean, if you slow down with white, play a couple of irrelevant moves, and then who knows? Maybe black is doing more than fine.
No, but maybe he is even positionally forced to do so after a move like bishop D2. He doesn't want to allow
bishop D2. You probably don't want to. Once again, you do more or less anything. Like let this be anything else. Bishop B4,
and then the knight.
Just to simplicity. Takes, and what? And you're waiting. Basically, you're waiting if white will or will not find a way to break through, and it's very likely that he will.
He's gone knight C5, perhaps anticipating.
So A4, knight to C5. So the serious question, do we take it or not? Because knight D7, knight B7, in both cases kind of shuts down a lot of black pieces. Takes away a lot of squares. So the feeling is that...
probably he will take it.
So it's like takes, but what do we do then?
Well, maybe A4
still B4,
Can he play knight A6 here?
Knight a6. Yes, he can. Yeah, just to get the other knight to c7.
Yeah. But then the knight on a6 doesn't look too good yet because it can go to b4, but that's about it.
That was my concern. Yeah, so that maybe ideally, of course, I would prefer b4 knight to b5, knight to c7. But this, well, this is hardly possible. Wait a sec. Another. Well, I don't know if it will ever materialize, but like going rook a6. Knight to a8, this to c7, this to b6, this to c4. But it's too many moves in a row. White are obviously going to have something. Bishop f1 and already here.
Already you're forced.
Puts the stop to my brilliant plan, and then some.
But look, put the other rook on b6, hitting c6. So I guess rook c1 is coming.
b6, you attack the pawn, rook here.
And maybe a3.
And maybe even a3 here, you're right. Yeah, still this setup with knight on c7, pawn on b5 is super solid.
They are not, the most beautiful knights we've ever seen at chess, but they still do a good defensive job. And with a3, you activate your rook, and perhaps you get the rook later too. Or perhaps the b pawn just goes down.
Maybe you take and then you start pushing the b pawn.
I mean, it's
okay. So not a desperate situation by any means.
No.
And let's just quickly check the second game where Grischuk left him with less than 10 minutes and still didn't even play move 20.
Yeah.
So
standard situation for him.
Yeah, we were claiming that yes, he's willing to take risk, willing to go to time trouble, but not this kind of a time trouble, I'm afraid. So queen a6, rook c2, and then bishop to d6 was played. So this is the true idea behind queen a6, right? So bishop to d6, and I believe, well, once again, I just wanted to say that black wants to take on e5. No, that's the problem. Well, at least my experience of playing this kind of Catalan positions, mostly with white color, is that you have the knight versus the dark square bishop. Usually it is slightly better. You have the dark square bishop against the knight with white. Again, it's slightly better because you play f3, you put it on f2, you go e4. So the feeling is like black wants to exchange bishop for bishop, knight for knight, something like that.
Exactly.
And therefore white's task is to prevent black from doing so. But in terms of concrete play, what to do? Because when I'm unable to calculate anything, I just want to swap pieces at random, like taking c8, going queen d3, which probably is not very clever.
Well, knight d5 is always...
Yeah, knight d5 is always there. Yeah, well, actually, knight d5 is the answer to most of white tries.
Yep, true. And if he plays rook c1, then you always have queen b7 later.
Yeah, queen b7 check is always there. Yeah. Well, it's once again, maybe that's a wrong feeling of Grischuk being in trouble because he has spent a lot of time. Maybe because he has spent a lot of time, he's not in trouble, but, well, approaching the time trouble. But
but the thing is, there might be some slight problems to solve later on, which may require time to do so. So it's always like, I know he's so fantastic at keeping control, even with very little time, and feeling where his pieces belong to and so on. But still, when you have some concrete problems to solve with little time, it's never easy, even for people like him.
even for Grischuk. And I believe, well, I'm not following this particular thing in great detail recently, but I believe there was a historical moment where Alexander Grischuk, first time in his career, lost on time in classical chess.
Did it happen?
There was at some European Club Cup, I believe, a few years ago. Yeah, but the point is that, yeah, well, he's so good at playing on 30 seconds, and sometimes even displays tricks with his opponents, right? Well, Grischuk on seconds,
No, for the opponent, it's not
terrible.
It's not an easy situation to handle either. But I can tell a story because I've played and I played a little bit of shogi, Japanese chess, when the time control is not really the same, but a bit similar. In the final phase, you basically have only 30 seconds per move. You cannot accumulate time. You get 30 seconds, and they have these special clocks which make a beep. They make a beep when you have 20 seconds, when you have 10 seconds, and then they make a beep at each second.
Oof.
Basically. So, and I watched these players, top players, in the time trouble phase, and they're just sitting like nothing happens, very cool, nothing, and the beeps are going, you know, like the hearts in the hospital.
Yeah, 6, 5,
exactly.
4.
And on the last move, they just raise their hand slowly, play the move, and push the clock as if nothing happened. And we chess players were just nervous.
Yeah, well,
people just move back.
Guys, if you had seen chess players on last seconds, you've seen a lot, I believe.
But they are so cool. It's unbelievable, and I was simply amazed to see them and to watch that.
Okay, so if you have a chance to interview Grischuk, ask him about how he keeps calm like this, during those time troubles. Sure. Yeah, well, he doesn't necessarily look calm, but the level of his play really impresses us. So thanks for joining. I believe Arthur is getting back soon, yes, and sure. We will be pleased to invite you more if you will.
And I'll be pleased to come back.
Thanks. All right, so meanwhile, I'll check Duda and, Mamedyarov and Duda's game once again. Knight to c5 was the last move that was played in this position, precisely as we've anticipated. So knight c5, knight is heading towards d7, b7 somewhere, trying to enter black's position. Yeah, I believe if it's white to move, it's got to be knight to d7, and then the rook cannot get to b6. Well, it just looks terrible. So the feeling is this knight has to be taken.
Yeah, but anyway, I mean, I'm back here in the studio. Still, it feels that something was missed by Shakhriyar. I mean, before... it felt that white's advantage was so obvious, and right now it might be just possible that black has managed to build some kind of a fortress, because these knights, I mean, they're so mighty.
Looks solid, yeah.
Right.
But you know what? Duda just played the move, and it is not bishop takes c5. Bishop e7.
That's interesting.
This, that's quite a move. What can I say? I was, advertising the fact that both knight d7 and b7 are very dangerous. So first of all, let's see what Shak decides to do here, and then is it really dangerous? Because Duda simply ignores it. And I'm starting to think, how realistic are the chances that black can give away this exchange? Okay, maybe not immediately,
right?
But at some point. Well, essentially, let's pretend something like this happened. This is blocked in some way, and white is in exchange up. Okay, I'll just give it away, just to understand what's going. This does look like a fortress, right? B3 answered with A3.
Well, it definitely does, but most likely it's not going to happen, because Shakhriyar wants to open things, I would imagine, at some time at the king side. So.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not that white's objective is to close the king side. It's just that I mean, maybe somehow he has the chance, like to give this exchange away and then put the knight on g7, try to block it. Yeah, first of all, it's not clear. Do you leave it there now and actively to sacrifice an exchange? I don't really see a chance, right? You can go rook d8 and maybe... Once again, you never want to take on d7, even if it's like gives you the pawn. In addition to exchange, you don't want to open the c file, it seems.
Well, either way, I think the only real chance for white, I don't think he is going to break through at the queen side, because Duda has managed to put up seemingly a fortress with the pawns on b5, pawns on a4, and the knight on c7. So I would say white's best bet is try to open things at the king side. So I would imagine something like g4 and g takes on f5, and presumably try to combine a positional pull at the queen side with doing something at the king side. So
yeah,
I'm sure he is thinking about this. Something like perhaps I don't know where should the knight go. Should it go to d7 or b7? But I would imagine perhaps even knight b7.
Yes, like knight b7 creates an additional possibility that somewhere I'll put the bishop on f4 and then the knight can go to d6. And it's so hard for black to ignore this knight all the time.
Right.
And it cannot be, well, on b7 it's obviously just an exchange, and if it's taken on d6 with black not winning this pawn immediately, it's just lost. Right, so knight b7 has its merit as well.
I mean, my point was if I play, for example, knight b7, then I can play bishop f1, the knight on c7 is stuck defending the pawn on b5. I can reroute the the bishop from f1 to e2 and make this g4 happen. And presumably then, probably you're absolutely right with this maneuver, bishop f4, try to combine these ideas. Let's say bishop f1.
Yeah, but it's so tough, I mean, because why I'm stuck here, I don't know what move black is supposed to play. I mean, if you're just waiting, then let's show this is what's going to happen to you. It's this, and then not even sure, maybe h4.
Maybe h4, I don't know, g4
maybe
just an idea.
g4, then this moment, let's say you want to put the knight on g7 in order to be able to take with the knight, and then white, well, might as well play f3 or h3. So essentially my point was that I want to do this, want to play h4, h5, put the bishop to f4 so that I have knight d6 in the right moment. King, of course, will go to somewhere like f2 at least. And then, and how is black supposed to hold everything? In the game we have knight d7.
Who knows? I mean, it's really tough task for him the whole game. He has been in some sort of trouble, then greater, then lesser. I mean, for the whole game, ever since the opening, ever since he swapped off the queens, queen takes on b3 and knight a6, he got into some kind of a trouble, and he has been fighting ever since.
Yeah, right. At some point it felt even being like more critical for black than there was a feeling that black improved his position, and maybe this maneuver with knight b4 and especially knight c6
that
was
looked
too
strange.
hasty.
That looked really strange.
Because there was the other possibility which was mentioned by Yannick, that possibly rook a4 was an alternative, once again preparing to double the rooks. Well, not sure, maybe black would have replied with a5 in this case. This seems like the only possibility to stop rooks from doubling on a file. Yeah, but anyway, somewhere around this point, it felt that black is kind of gathering himself. And and over here, bishop e7, knight d7, once again, it looks critical for black.
Yeah, but Shak decided to put the knight on d7. It's probably possible. I mean, I cannot really understand what is the difference between these two moves. Knight b7 would have allowed some knight d6 check ideas. On the other hand, knight on d7 potentially at some moment can play knight b6 and I don't know, but it looks nice on d7 anyway.
Well, the thing is that, first, once again, the plan includes opening some files on the king side, and then, if we need, we might return to c5, d7.
Perhaps his idea is simply to open the queen side. For example, play rook c to b1, just play b3. Maybe that's the simple idea. And
rook
if you
c
play
to b1,
with...
okay, black does something.
Something funny.
C to b1.
So the point is b3, and if you play a3, I play b4, and presumably I grab the pawn.
a3, b4, and then,
something like that. I don't know, it at least
well,
jumps to my
attention.
attention.
He's in time, maybe, to double himself on the
probably
a file. Who knows?
I mean, the pawn on c6 is hanging.
Yeah, the pawn on c6 was hanging already.
Okay, so my idea doesn't work, but at least I thought perhaps that was the idea, to take away the square of b8 for the rook, to defend the pawn on b5, and then potentially at some moment to play this b3 and force for black to take a takes on b3 and play rook b1, rook b3, and take the pawn on b5. But maybe it just doesn't work. It's probably not so simple.
Yeah, so maybe he has to, still come up with something on the king side, with bishop e2, g4.
I mean, it's quite a simple logic. Who first invented it? I think it was Nemtsovich, right? Two weaknesses.
Yeah, the principle of two weaknesses.
Right. It's very simple. I mean,
oh wow, what's going on? rook d8, bishop to f1, rook a6, Shak comes back to c5. Ah well, a little trick, rook takes c6, knight b7 wins an exchange, because there is no check on c1, so that after rook c1, knight d8 comes with a check.
In the meantime, the game against Yangyi against Alexander Grischuk has ended. We'll very quickly, obviously, return for this game, but...
Yeah, let's see quickly. So, bishop d6. Yeah, well, I'm a bit surprised. Knight d7 was played. Rook takes c2, queen c2, rook c8. And Yangyi himself took on f6 and offered a draw. No? Was it a draw?
Unless Alexander Grischuk, before taking the knight, offered a draw and the Yangyi agreed, I think you're right. It seems like knight takes on f6 was a draw. Because the white queen is under attack, you need to move the queen and then the bishops go away. And
At times, yeah, there is no rook d6, which
right.
might be important because of this check. Yeah, otherwise... Otherwise, white would win on the spot, but there is luckily
you're right.
This check on b7.
It feels that Yangyi missed something because he had a very nice positional pull, although we could not exactly make it how great it is. Definitely white had an edge, perhaps even a solid advantage.
It felt that white was better.
Perhaps was this rook c2 already not so active move, because we were thinking about whichever move it was.
There was some attempt to play queen f3 or rook c4. Well, with rook on c1, obviously, yeah.
Well, it looked interesting at least. I mean,
rook d3. Yeah, well, there were various tries, and yeah, somehow.
But maybe it just doesn't work. I don't know. Maybe indeed queen f4 just takes the pawn, and there's something. I mean, some needed tactics.
It looks like. Yeah, rook c2 allowed bishop d6, which more or less ensures a swap of one pair of minor pieces at least. And Yangyi himself decided to swap all the pieces. Rook c8 takes on. Even though I'm kind of still not fully convinced it's... no, well, the e2 pawn is hanging, yeah.
Yeah, so bishop
takes,
f4
and
you
I'll have to take with the pawn, yeah.
Yes, most likely.
And then this might be just a draw immediately, because after rook d8 I have king g7.
Right.
Yeah, and then swapping the queens should be no problem. So, well, Yannick Pelletier will interview the players, and we will come back after that with the only remaining game where Shakhriyar Mamedyarov tries to take over Jan-Krzysztof Duda.
Third game to finish today, the one between Yangyi and Alexander Grischuk in a draw in this Catalan. Yangyi, do you think you were at any point slightly better?
Yes, maybe some moment I have a chance, but I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
Alexander, you took quite a lot of time to solve perhaps some small problems. You obviously managed to do that, but how difficult was it?
No, it was extremely difficult, yeah. Okay, there was a Russian movie with boxer Nikolai Valuev as a main actor, and it was called, I think, Holes in the Head, because, I mean, he was boxer, he had, I mean, after getting hit, but I was not hit, but I just cannot remember anything, because, of course, I could not even remember if I should start with bishop e4 or with c5. That's how bad it was, and and somehow black should equalize after queen b3, but definitely, I guess, not how I played. Yeah, so the position was very dangerous. And I don't know, I mean, I don't know what computer will say, but even if he says it's a small advantage, in fact, it's very dangerous for black. It's just, I mean, a matter if white, for example, could play queen f3 and b3, okay, it's just much, much worse for black. I mean, all endgames can be just lost, and yeah, I was very happy with the draw, of course.
You are saying that you had many holes in your memory about this variation, so why did you choose it?
No, about everything. It's about any variation. It's not about variation, it's about head.
So are you implementing that you do not prepare before the game?
Why?
Because you choose a line and then you don't remember.
No, but the thing is, even if I prepare, I don't remember. This is the worst thing. I mean, this dimension.
I see, like a boxer then. Are you two looking forward to the tiebreak tomorrow?
Yeah, I don't know. I hope to play a good game and good results.
No, I guess, but what else are we supposed to do?
But maybe you could be scared or anxious, or you are thrilled about this.
No, thrilled is too much, but given that I had two clearly worse positions, of course, I mean, I could not dream about anything more, you know.
All right, thank you very much.
So, second day of round 2, the second classical game develops much faster than we used to. After, well, how many that was? 3 hours and 15 minutes of play, we are left with one game only. The game where Shakhriyar Mamedyarov tries to prove his advantage against Jan-Krzysztof Duda. Let's remind our audience, 3 draws, and that means Maxime Vachier-Lagrave has qualified for the semi-final, and we will have 2 tiebreaks for Yangyi, Grischuk, and for Wesley So and Sergey Karjakin.
Well, at least we'll have something to do tomorrow, right? It's not only one tiebreak, it's at least 2 tiebreaks, so potentially there might be a third pair if Shakhriyar won't manage. I mean, maybe it's even Jan-Krzysztof Duda, but assuming that if this game will end in a draw, there is a potentially third tiebreak. But at least right now it looks that Shakhriyar is still in the driver's seat, and after knight c5, rook b6, the last moves, I think it was a cute tactic. Did we mention it? That after knight c5, rook takes on c6.
Rook c6, knight b7. Yeah,
b7.
that's the trick.
And
so rook c1, knight
there's no
d8.
check on the white king. I mean, the bishop is luckily on f1.
That's why the bishop is on f1, so there is no check. Yeah, at some point I've even started to think if this can be defendable, but no, black is never on time.
Well, it definitely looks risky.
Yeah, that's hopeless.
And the point is here, after rook b6, we try to make work b2, b3. I think that's the most human choice, because white's plan is to plan to open up the queen side, and a takes on b3, knight b3 should be quite an obvious advantage for white, because rook is incoming to a7.
Takes, yeah.
Yeah, so this is definitely extremely dangerous. Then potentially knight a5, knight b7 is causing even more trouble. So that is not going to work. So most likely, I mean, rook takes on c6 is still impossible because of the knight b7 threat. So black has to take, instead of the a takes on b3, bishop takes on c5. And we try.
Wait, this?
What about
one more time? Knight b7.
You want to try to make this fortress happen?
Takes.
No,
I don't think it happens. Yeah, it's just what I thought. Maybe some. No.
Maybe a3. But white can just play b4, I think.
b4. Bishop here,
and bishop d2.
Bishop here, right. No, that should fall apart.
That is lost.
So yeah, so after b3, it seems like the only reasonable reaction is to take on c5. And then, well, rook takes c5 seems possible. If black takes, yeah, well, we are not that happy, but still rook b1, rook takes b3 must be in white's favor. But as well, after bishop c5, there is dc5, a bit more forcing move. Black has to take on c6. Has he?
I think so.
Well, technically there is rook a6.
Well, but the pawn on...
Saving the a pawn, right?
But the pawn on c6 looks so ominous. I mean,
yes.
b takes on a4.
Yeah, well, let's try.
Looks very dangerous.
Because, yeah, rook c6, this we agreed to be, well, at least it looks like, much better for white.
Yeah.
Yeah, because d4, is not possible. The knights are still stuck, and there are some files open, there are some diagonals open. Rook from a4, now that I notice it does support g4 in the right moment, can be switched even to
Let's
h4.
Let's not forget about that, right?
Yeah, so this looks very attractive for white. And if black tries this, to try to keep the a pawn alive, so like when you take, okay, rook takes. Who knows? I mean, it still has to be very close to, well, not better, but like winning. I mean, if...
So what about rook a8? Maybe
rook
there is no
a8,
configuration.
rook a8, and then, well, you won a3 at the same time, yeah?
Now that I look at it, it's not even so clear, because although maybe the black knights are actually paralyzed.
Yeah, that was that's why I paused. I mean, I'm trying to understand if black will or will not have the possibility to actually get, I mean, from this position, I mean, to develop the knights somehow.
I mean, there might be a simple idea. Bishop d3 and king f1, e1, d2, b3, c3, b4, and just take the pawn.
Take the pawn, yeah. I mean, you can do it this way as well.
But then bishop c2 is rook a6, so I'm not sure what happens there. I mean, if you take with the rook, I mean, essentially reach the same position, right? After rook takes on a4, you play rook c6.
Yeah, it's like black is waiting, we do this. Bishop d3. Well, I just ran into a double attack, by the way, so bishop d4 was silly. But yeah, so point being, yeah, if this happens, then white should be very, very happy again.
Yeah, so it would seem, and the rook is paralyzed completely, so bishop d3 cuts out the rook completely from the game.
Seems that we are wrong again, because b3, a b3 was played. If I see it correctly, yeah, b3, a, b3, and knight takes b3. So Duda says, I don't care.
I think he cares, but he probably did not see anything better.
Yeah, well, what does he do now? Because rook a7, other rook to other rook to a1 drops the c6 pawn. Maybe this rook a7 is not such a terrible trick. Can I do this? So rook a8, as ugly as it looks. So when you take, I'll take with the knight, and the other knight goes to c7. Maybe that's the trick. I still believe white has to be much better. But
no, definitely white is better. I mean, there's no question about it. But probably the question is white winning? I mean, rook a8, we can try to make happen rook a8, knight a8, and bishop d2. Somehow include the bishop into game. And if you play knight c7, bishop a5, and I claim I have a big advantage. I don't know if there is anything.
It's a right claim, but yeah, what can I do about it?
So, but look at the knight on a8.
Yeah, it's not a happy customer.
It's not.
I agree.
It's a very, very sad lone knight on a8. But
knight c5, yeah, I mean, it feels terrible, but well, even in this position, something makes me think that white might not be able to win without opening the second front.
So probably Jan-Krzysztof understands, I mean, definitely he understands what he is doing, and he decided that this is the best practical chance, because he was not happy with the position after bishop takes on c5, d takes, rook c6, and b takes on e4, the position which we were analyzing previously, and so we have this position already on the board. So,
yeah, takes happen.
So this was played actually, and I imagine the other knight from e8 is going to jump to c7. And then, well, idealistically, I mean, assuming that we allow black to do whatever he wants. I mean, let's say we are moving with the king here and there.
Yeah.
Black is improving the position. So knight c7, rook b8, knight b6 and knight c4.
Tries to get the knight to c4, and if he does so,
he's probably fine. Great position.
Yeah. He's probably fine. So the question is if black ever will be in time to do it.
Most likely he won't, but who knows? I mean,
the takes happen, and now it's Mamedyarov to move. There might be various ways to try to get there. So, what does black do on bishop d2? Does he allow me to put the bishop on a5, or he plays? Yeah, that's what we were looking at. Yeah, because now that I think of it, maybe black plays b4, trying to shut down this bishop, so that the bishop is not getting to a5, and then puts the knight on c7 and says, well, okay, I mean...
Perhaps it's even not so bad, because, okay, white has this mighty pawn on c6, but, okay, black also has a not so bad pawn on b4. If the white knight moves away, it can be even moved
b3,
forward.
b2, yeah.
So
same thing, white desperately needs to, well, to use his space advantage, opening the second front, and then switching the pieces from one side to the other faster than those two knights which are bound to block the c-pawn.
But I have another idea. What if white sacrifices the pawn on c6 and let's say goes for some kind of activity? I don't know, maybe it's a ridiculous idea, but it probably is. I mean, I had this idea that rook a1 and rook a7,
rook a1,
I go for some kind of activity.
Yeah, rook c7.
So rook c6, you take the pawn obviously, and now I try to prove I have a great game somehow. Something like, I don't know, but it's probably ridiculous.
Knight. Yeah, no, I mean, it has its point because those knights, they are bound to defend each other.
Yeah, right? But the problem is that after knight a5, black has the move rook a6, so it pretty much liquidates to a drawn endgame. I mean, it's still not draw, but
it's still white who is trying, by the way, because black is practically paralyzed still, like takes, bishop b5, but yeah, it seems that it's much easier for black than it was.
Right.
All right, so the swap on a8 happened, and that's it. So in fact, yeah, Mamedyarov was thinking in this position.
Well, how are they doing with the time? Right now?
8 minutes versus 7 minutes, but they are approaching move 40, so it's move number 37. It's not that someone's gonna have real-time trouble.
Well, but still, Mamedyarov needs to be precise because for black, it's the improving of the pieces can be much more annoying if he manages to play this rook b8, knight b6, and knight c4. So he cannot really allow to make some quiet moves here and there. He should watch out for this idea. So.
Yeah, it's like that's the benefit of having the bad position. I mean, any move you make it makes your position better.
Right.
It was so those pieces are really terribly placed, and if someone would tell you like, now I put my knight in the corner on a8 and it actually improves my position because it was worse, was even worse. Yeah, that's funny. But yes, black kind of got for a long period of this game, black had no way to, kind of no plan at all, right? So simply moving here and there. And then finally black has the way to regroup his position, to regroup his forces to, well, improve the position. So bishop d2 ends up playing bishop d2.
Actually, Duda looks quite relaxed.
Yeah.
He was sitting quite happy with his position. He knows probably the worst is behind him.
Yeah, but that's surprising, to be honest. That's really surprising, to be honest. So first of all, I thought, like, at first place, this knight had to be taken on c5. That was the feeling. Or here. Yeah, like knight c5. It felt like this knight has to be taken automatically. Then, yeah, putting the knight on b7, we agreed, kind of, well, felt to make more sense. It was put on d7, immediately returned to c5 a move later. Once again was not taken, which was a surprise, and especially it was a surprise that it wasn't taken here, but I must say that I believe Duda was right. Rook a8 takes, and this does look pretty solid. And he doesn't bother to play b4, he just goes knight c7, indeed opting for this rook to b8 thing.
He is probably confident that he is holding this position. Bishop a5 is going to be met by rook a6. And the black squared white bishop is going nowhere unless exchanging on c7. So he probably is not very concerned about this.
Right. But what will be black's next moves? If, I'll say playing something and want to open the king side, because so, you can put the knight on b6.
I mean, maybe knight b6, bishop d8, and knight c4. What about this idea?
Like this, put the knight on b6 and put
maybe it doesn't
bishop.
work, but
here
bishop d8.
Bishop d8. I can try to postpone the inevitable by playing rook a1. Now on knight c4 there is a tactic with bishop c7.
Right.
And rook a1, bishop takes d8. Yeah, but it does seem that black will achieve it sooner or later. Maybe not, because I'm getting ready for knight c5 with rook a1. So once again, it's very common for those games of top players that, well, positional decisions, they are based on the short tactics, right? So it's like, yeah, if this little tactic worked, that it gives me a chance to, to regroup the pieces in even in a better way. So we'll see. Anyway, if I'm playing white here, I believe I do play bishop a5, and then
it should be quite automatic.
Yeah, because that's sort of the only way to disrupt black's idea of putting the knight on b6 to c4. Maybe still black goes to b8. That's the other possibility.
Now we have to try to make this knight c5 probably happen.
Yeah, that's once again this knight c5 thing.
And probably this is the last time when black has to take this knight. I mean, you cannot really endure.
Yeah, now if knight b7, knight d6 happens now, that will be
so
disaster.
You take and run with the b pawn as far as possible.
Maybe I take with the pawn. Can this be? That would be a funny position, because now those knights really look like they won't move till the end of the game.
Right.
Who knows, yeah?
Well, I don't know. Maybe d4, knight d5.
Yeah, this way.
Very, very.
Yeah, but that's once again
clear.
all of a sudden from like black being slightly worse, black's position looks holdable. We go all the way back to is white winning or close to winning, because this position.
Draw grid.
What?
Draw grid.
Really?
Unless somebody resigned. I think
No, I don't believe anyone resigned.
Why?
Bishop a5 was played, and Shah gives it away, not even trying. Well, now, as caster, as the commentator, I don't really mind this, because that means a very short day in the office. But really, guys, bishop a5, white is still better. I don't quite understand what goes on with Shah. Well, let me... Yeah, remember second day when he won against Dubov, he was complaining about some tooth pain. So, well, I hope it's not this. Hope it's not this, because, well... That would be...
Well, it does influence, I mean, how you play, how you're actually feeling during the game. I mean, perhaps you had a bad day. I mean, you slept so badly. Nobody knows. I mean, it's the same guy playing the same opponent, but perhaps he's just feeling completely different than yesterday, and this might influence. I mean...
Yeah, but the feeling is that Duda is relieved, of course, and for the few moments in this game, it really felt like he was not on the verge of losing, but I mean, a really tough spot.
I think it's a big escape for him, because at one moment when he played this sort of slightly, I don't know, can I call it dubious defense, removed the bishop to c8, b7, then he played f5. His position felt so cramped.
Yeah, right. By the way, if he come back all the way to move 19... You're right. All the way to move 19 after he played f5. And we were discussing that starting from this point, a white should prepare the king side, opening the king side attack. And it never materialized in the game.
Yeah,
so that's mysterious, because, yes, black pieces are so poorly placed that you want to just throw this g3, g4 in some point, and then see what happens. And by the end of the day, it was never played. So, well, you guys can see the final position, right?
So also makes me question what was wrong with the simple idea to double the rooks, or perhaps he just forgot about it. Because as soon as you played, at some moment he had played rook a5, he was targeting the d pawn, then he played rook a1 back for some reason, so perhaps the thought just kept his mind that you can always go back and just double the rooks on the a file, because I felt that was the easiest plan. I'm not sure, is it in this particular position or somewhere around here?
But even here, I believe, earlier, of course, before black has played bishop f8, and I believe here we were discussing that something like rook a2, and...
I think something, maybe not exactly on this spot, but something around here, rook a2 looked especially mighty, because it pretty much forces for the a pawn to move forward, and then you can just proceed with knight a4.
Yeah, you force it here, you put the knight on c5. Black still holds for some time with bishop c8.
Oh, this looks so terrible.
But yeah, guys, well, it has to be something.
Well,
absolutely has to be something.
It only proves one thing: they are humans. I mean, even such great players as themselves, they tend to sometimes make these mistakes, and it's so easy for us sitting with a nice cup of coffee here in the studio analyzing the game, but the tension's so high, with the stakes so high. I mean, even such great players sometimes make these inaccuracies, and then after the game they watch it on, okay, how did I think about this possibility? But still,
all right. So Mamedyarov didn't win this one. The draw was agreed after bishop a5. We are ready with an interview, and I was told it's Jan-Krzysztof alone, and Mamedyarov left somewhere, if I'm not mistaken. So it could be this health issues, and I hope everything's fine with Shakhriyar.
Right.
Anyway, an interview with Jan-Krzysztof Duda, and then we will be back to wrap it up.
The last game has just finished between Mamedyarov and Jan-Krzysztof Duda. Thanks a lot for joining us, Jan-Krzysztof. It seemed you were suffering in that game.
Yes, definitely. I guess it's my first game when I wasn't better in any moment in this Grand Prix, and yeah, actually I was suffering because I played this variation. I had analyzed it, but it was very, very, very long ago, and didn't remember much from my analysis, because, well, playing Slav, when I played Slav, I didn't expect this line to happen, but my opponent surprised me with knight f3, g3, and I thought it's probably g6 is just the safest move. And okay, it should be more or less equal, but then he played interestingly, namely c takes d5 and then rook a5. And well, at first it looked very harmless to me, but then I realized that it's quite venomous, and okay, I very much wanted to play some active chess like knight b4 and then rook b5, knight c6 to sacrifice the pawn b7, but I couldn't have quite make it work, so I decided to prefer to stay passive with knight c7. Then I thought that rook a1, his move rook a1 surprised me, because I thought that he was going to double his rooks on the a file. But still, when he played knight d3, I realized that my position is was slightly worse at least, and this knight c8, bishop b7, and bishop c8, bishop b7 man could have been not that good, but okay, it's because I allowed him to play e4, e5, and then I was suffering without space, basically, but probably I should have chosen something else, and then I was relying on some kind of blockade or fortress. Actually, this game is quite similar to yesterday's, I think, in some aspects, not only the opening. And well, I was quite happy when he played this before b5 and before knight c6, because then, I had some play on the queen side, and pawn c6 was safely blockaded, so possibly he should have played something slower on the king side or something else, I don't know. And then it was still worse probably slightly. Maybe I shouldn't have rushed with b5, maybe I could have just played a5 and stay. But I prefer to play more in the more active way. And he had some tricks when he played knight c5 and some knight d7, knight b7 ideas, but overall I think this position was tenable for black, and I managed to draw it.
From a practical point of view, let's say after the exchange of on c6, when he has this passed pawn on c6, it's clear that you have to defend, but you have to choose between an active defense or passive defense, perhaps hoping for some sort of fortress. How do you take this decision?
Probably because I had so passive position the entire game that I decided to play something active. To me it felt natural, I think, to push the pawns as far as possible. And I wanted to play knight a8, knight b6, knight c4 perhaps at some moment, but it's not very realistic, I guess. And I had some ideas, some other ideas, but what I did, I think, was quite good.
Tomorrow comes a tie break. How do you assess your chances?
okay, I don't know what to expect. I've played only one game against Shakhriyar in faster time controls in Rapid. No, two games actually, and all of them was draws, like any other game with Shakhriyar, because no one beat anybody yet, and well, we will see. I think that to be honest, I think that my chances are higher than in normal time control, but of course it might be just the opposite, so we'll see tomorrow.
All right, thank you very much. Good luck.
Thanks.
Okay, guys, we are back just to say goodbye. It was a very nice day for us.
It was the shortest day for us.
Yeah,
I mean,
but seriously, well, all 4 draws, but it felt so exciting. Even this short game between Vachier-Lagrave and Topalov. Topalov tried for exactly 11 moves. On move 12, as the official broadcast say, he offered the draw without making a move. Or maybe he did play h6 and offer the draw. This game was quite tense for a very short period of time, but you could see from his face that, yeah, it was.
But it was so difficult for him. It's understandable. I mean, yesterday he lost the game with white, so you would have to imagine you have to come out with black, and you have to outplay an opponent who of you lost with the black color so much more. Actually, before this game, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave was leading with white against Veselin Topalov, 6 wins, 1 loss, and a few draws. Yeah. So, and he's in a great shape. And how can you outplay this guy? I mean,
yeah, and then you try, you get a worse position, and you call it a day. Right, all the games are drawn. That means all the other matches finish with 1-1 score, and there will be a huge tiebreak going on tomorrow. Wesley So and Karjakin. We thought Wesley had slight chances in the final position. Mamedyarov, Duda. Well, it feels like a lot of missed opportunities for Mamedyarov, and perhaps only Yangyi and Grischuk was a fair, square game where you found some chances to press, but Alexander.
Actually, it was you who actually found it. I think it was not my idea to play Queen f3, but I'm not sure if it actually works.
Yeah. Well, no, but I mean that. Yeah, Grischuk seemingly defended quite well, and.
Right.
All right, so we can see the tournament roster. That it's Maxime Vachier-Lagrave waiting in the semi-final for the winner of Yangyi Grischuk, and then Mamedyarov Duda, the winner of that, will face either Wesley So or Sergey Karjakin, depending on the result of tomorrow's tiebreak. So let's wrap it up. Less than 4 hours. Can't be happier than that. Thanks very much, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. And make sure to come back tomorrow. Tomorrow will be 3 tiebreaks and no other tiebreaks, because let's confess, during the first tiebreak day, from time to time, whenever we would have a break, we were watching great tennis legends and play. Yeah, so we were watching another tiebreak from Wimbledon.
So this time Wimbledon is over, and then there's going to be no other tiebreaks for us to watch. So I hope you will tune in tomorrow and continue watching the Grand Prix with us. Thank you for watching us, and see you tomorrow.
See you guys. Bye-bye.